Oh wow, we already got people here. Crazy. All right. Hi, folks. What's going on? I don't know. I figured I would hop on here and kill a couple hours maybe. I planned to start streaming earlier, but I just I don't know. I was dicking around, working on other stuff, cleaning up some stuff. I don't know. I had this thought where I was going to play video games, and then I didn't do that. It's been this ever-growing battle. Weird hair. That I've been trying. Oh God, there it is. That I've been trying to get myself to like sit down and play a video game for myself, just to enjoy that time for me. And one, I sit around and think about it a lot. Two, I struggle on what game I should play. And then I just while away the hours and then I don't. But instead, let's hang out and chat. So, some of you had said in the past, would I ever do these Q&As with a theme and like an actual purpose? And I thought, yeah, that could be interesting. I'm still not going to negate people who want to do Q&A stuff, right? If people want to ask questions, we could talk about that for sure. But I thought maybe I could do a little dip into like my world building process, or at least we can world build some stuff together for my homebrew world, just to kill some time, but then again, also answer questions. Are we talking about world building? Yeah, we are. We're going to talk about world building, but I'll also answer questions. I do have a few agenda items. I feel like I'm at work. A few agenda items that I want to discuss, which I will get to those. Care to talk about lizard folk? Sure. What do you want to talk about lizard folk? I think they're fine. I like them. I don't have anything specific. How far do you think about the economy of your cities? You mean like how much gold or you know, monetary things are available in the cities? I don't put too much thought into it. You know, I kind of figure out what the city might be known for, what kind of goods and services they would trade in. So I can show you some stuff in just a little bit here. What tools, websites do I use to make maps? I use Incarnate primarily for the world maps, but they've done a ton of updates and I haven't really messed around with stuff in a while. The deity stuff is I've done a little bit more work and I can showcase what I've done and we can talk about that too. My day was pretty good. I got up at 9 o'clock. The kids slept in late. We hung around and watched some TV. I did some work around the house. I updated a few things and worked on a couple projects. Kids and my wife went in the pool. I put out, worked on a couple videos. And then it was awesome. I hung out with my oldest son while my youngest was napping. Me and my oldest son took a 2-hour nap together, which was amazing because, you guys know that sleep is not something that I often do. So a 2-hour mid-afternoon nap was amazing. Had some dinner, hung out with my wife for a while and, tried to do things, filmed a couple TikToks, and then here I am. So things like gold trading, what can be bought. Yeah, I do think a lot about what each city will have available. I try to make, come up with a standard things that you'll find in a given city, but then also like what will be unique to a specific city. Do they have something? What makes them, and I also try to think about it, one, in a reasonable thing in like the terms of the world, but also in the interest of the players, right? Why does this city exist? Why does it still exist? What makes it prosperous? What does it do that the other cities don't? Ever try a world where one nation or area uses wizardry and other sorcery? I have not, but that's interesting. How well do you think WotC handles world building for their settings from a new player perspective? I think they don't really they rely, I think, heavily on nostalgia, which is why they don't really provide a ton of stuff. Like, Van Richten's was very rough draft-ish in my mind, but it had the nostalgia factor. Oh, thank you, Lemonade Mochi. Yeah, I try to be normal. That's I like to consider myself the everyman's D&D streamer, YouTuber person. Like, you know, I'm what you could do with a relatively decent setup, time, and knowledge. You know, I'm not like unapproachable too, which I think also helps. Like, someone sees me at like a convention or something, you can feel comfortable to just like come up and chat with me because you know, I mean, unless I'm in the middle of like filming an interview or doing something, I obviously don't have any problem hanging out, playing games, whatever. It hasn't really happened because I've only been to like 2 conventions where folks have actually recognized me and like been like, hey, I like the content, but the channel has exploded comparatively to the last time I was at a con. Do I have any important tips for a new DM / world builder? Well, again, I'm not the best, so I'll preface that up front. But I think I would say if you have a book or a world that you really like, or a world, you know, something that's designed well, then it's good to use that as a reference. And then if you've ever played D&D, think about what stuff you consistently ask when you go to a town or a city or a region, right? What questions have you ever asked your DM? And more importantly, whatever questions have you asked your DM and they were stumped on and they didn't know? Hey DM, we're in X city. Do they have X or Y? And the DM says, oh man, I didn't really think about that. Well, maybe you want to think about that when you build your world, so that's like something that more than likely will come up and you're prepped to handle that. Since this isn't world building, I'll be quick since this isn't world building, but what's the best dragon to true polymorph into at level 18? I would say take a look at the metallics and find one that has an interesting secondary breath weapon. If you can get silver, I don't know what it translates to as far as that. Silver has the knockout breath weapon. That could be really powerful. I think keeping lizard focused tribal is basic. I see them as being ancient race. Yeah, I don't necessarily stick with the tropes of what things exist in. I kind of like kobolds are a normal part of society in my world. They run an entire kobolds take the place of gnomes, like traditional gnomes of like the tinkerers, the creators. In my homebrew world, kobolds are the ones who do that. How much do you like to make politics in the world influence the character's story? You know, I don't really tend just as far as like how my in-game politics work. You know, I don't put too much thought into it. Right now, a lot of my stuff has just been like cultures are at war for one reason or another, and that's like the extent of like politics that I deal with. I'll get into it. I'll show you my homebrew world, and we can talk high level about all the different regions and go through that. Do you have anything specific you want to show us? No, I will show you some stuff, and then I have some stuff I want to work on and get your opinions on, so we'll get there. How much world building is too much? I don't think there can be too much. I mean, like, Ed Greenwood's a little nutty with the amount of shit that the Forgotten Realms has, but you know what? There's a reference for just about everything. So, but I also would say when you're world building, you obviously need to have enough of the world that the players feel comfortable working in it, but also like build the stuff that makes you happy. You mentioned in the past videos about the Mages of Strixhaven, how you like to martial subclasses that span over other. What kind of subclasses would you like? I think you could probably look at the Tome of Battle, Book of Nine Swords, that kind of expanded stuff in 3.5 as an example for how you could incorporate that. As a one-year DM, is it inevitable that I'll have to world build? No, you can if you find a world that you like and want to do it, just live in that world. You don't have to build your own. It's just something that some people enjoy doing, and I like it as well. How transparent are you regarding enemy types your players can generally expect in each tier? I don't typically handle around the tiers. I have my world built and general regions, but sometimes I like just flipping through a monster book and being like, let's throw this one at them. One tip we use is giving locations, network part names, description of mundane object like the brown egg, the gold goose. How is your gut? You know what? I'm going to put on slow mode, folks, just so we don't lose the chat. I'm going to say 5 seconds on the slow mode. So that just means people can't send a message. It has to be 5 seconds before they send the next message. So that'll make it a little easier for me to maintain the questions and stay up to date, especially if we're going to start showing stuff. How important is the ecology of monsters? It is important to me, but there's not a lot of good stuff in 5e about monster ecology, so we don't have that. So I have to kind of look at older editions and kind of build it myself. Start with a world map and drill down, or start local and expand as necessary. Whatever works, whatever you enjoy more. If you like building maps, go with that. If you like building towns and cities and minutiae, start there, and then one will lead into the other. How strict are you on what races are allowed in different worlds, or would you just find a niche for a player? Pretty much, yeah. If a player has a race they want to play, I'll make it work, but I do have some restrictions, which I'll talk about. Do you like to base your fantasy faces on different fictional cultures? I've always thought that Klingons is a template for dwarves. Sometimes I do, depending on what I want, and, you know, like, there's well-established tropes that I think are okay. Talk about the gods. How large of a continent do you envision your worlds to be? You know, it's funny, you always start with one, and then you're like, is this going to be too small? Like, if I do one continent, then do I need to do, like, a world map? Then how many continents do I need? And I just say, like, I don't know. It's tricky, because you look at something like the Forgotten Realms, and it's massive. And it's just like, do I need that much? Because, like, how much realistically are my players going to play? And unless you're not planning... If you're not planning to publish it so other people can play in it, then you probably don't need to go crazy. So that's something I would also say, right? If you're planning on publishing your homebrew world for people to play in, consider that this might need to be something that stands the test of time for other people to play in. What's one feature, not counting sorcerer stuff, that if came out you'd think they'd bump in power? The ranger. Are you going to world build magic in your setting too? Not 100% magic from, like, the ground up. Like, maybe a little bit, like, depending on how we want to introduce magic, how it exists. And I'll talk about that because I have some theories and some thoughts. I've created a world I'm not happy with anymore, and now I'm delving into class creation hell homebrew. That can take some time. Thoughts on making a world that is mid-apocalyptic? That's interesting. Post-apocalyptic, like you said, is a trope at this point. Mid-apocalyptic is something we don't see very often, so it would be unique. During all your content, any thoughts on clone armies being made by Deep Spawn being useful? Oh, I mean, it could be, right? Making clones and just building up your mass army. That's something. What do you think about flying characters at level 1? It's tricky. Having flight shuts down a lot of very early level issues that you might like, or challenges you want to present to a party. If they can fly, a lot of things go away, right? A lot of trials come trivial. So I'm fine with it. You just need to have that in the back of your mind going forward. What do you think about using real-world cultures as a base for fantasy world cultures? How about usage of real-world cultures as base for non-human fantasy culture? You just got to be careful and respectful how you handle it. But, you know, you do you. How can I make a significant magic item that enhances world building? I don't want this to be a +1 sword. Well, there are some base rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide about adding characteristics to a +1 magic item. There's also some DM's Guild resources that are pretty good about that as well. I'll showcase some of those. What is an untouched genre that you think should be represented in 5e? I don't know if there's really like a genre that's not handled well at this point, that's not covered in some way. Like I said, I'm just curious to see what the new stuff they can come up with is. I typically start characters at level 3. You usually start them at level 1. Depends on the campaign. I like the early level stuff, but usually go from 1 to 3 really quick. So, do you ever data dump lore/world flavor on your players? Sometimes, and that's part of the things that I want to get to. I want to have like a general knowledge of the world, like pamphlet or booklet that like, these are things that everybody knows. And here you go. And then they can use that to inform how they want to go forward with it. Does your setting have something comparable to the Underdark? Yes, it does. Currently, it's just the Underdark because it's not fully separated from D&D stuff, which is something I want to do because if you ever want to sell it and publish it and not do it through the DM's Guild. Actually, you can't really publish campaign settings on the DM's Guild. It's not allowed. So you have to break away from WotC terminology. So anyway, Drake Warden. The Drake becomes... Oops. The Drake becomes... large. At 15, I would love if the developers made that size increase a feature earlier. I don't think it's too strong. You're probably just asking for the ability to ride it, and everybody wants that. 5.5 is coming out, and you are given 100% control over one subject or mechanic. Which do you choose? P.S. Thanks for making Graveyard Shift fun. Yeah, sure, Brian. What mechanic would I want 100% control over? That is a great question. If I could be given 100% control over one mechanic, subject or mechanic, I want to say class balance, because somebody went sleeping in 5e on the Ranger and the Sorcerer. Even if you don't look at the new stuff and you just look at what's there, somebody must have just slipped something through. What are my favorite inspirations for world building? You know, any kind of fantasy stuff. I looked at the way Explorer's Guide to Wildmount was written, and I enjoyed the way the sections were written. So I think that that's a pretty decent. That's the amount of detail that I'd like to have in my games. Are you going to reflavor / change published races? Not too much, unless I have to use a race that's not allowed because it's WotC owned. New players, gods did you recommend to use? I always like the Faerunian Pantheon because there's a god for just about everything. Greek Pantheon's another good one if you want to use something that's, you know, public domain and people know, so you can always do that. Or Egyptian's an interesting one too. It's not too commonly dealt with. Or Norse, right? You got good options there. How many gods is too many gods? I'm not the person to ask because I don't know. So I'm working on that myself. If I want to make an intimidating enemy, how would I come to make them scary? Like, how can I make them take the bad dude? Make them take the bad dude for the arc. Good. Yeah, so you want to make somebody intimidating. That's tricky. You could make other people afraid of them. You could, you know, give them an aura of magical abilities. You could give them... Counterspell can be very scary, especially at low levels. People are not expecting you to counter their magics. Hardest ruling I've ever had to make? Usually when it ever involves killing a character. Like, do I fudge this die roll? Like, I rolled a crit and I know I will kill this player. Do I fudge it? Or do I, like, roll a 2 and then miss? That's usually the hardest rulings I have is... And, like, at some points, I make the decision, like, hey, guys, I'm removing the screen and I'm rolling the dice where they fall. And that's it. Like, no hiding this, no changing things. We're just letting the dice go as they go, and we'll go from there. How accessible are your gods going to be? Do they roam around? So that's actually something that I do want to talk about, the conundrum that I find myself in. So I'm going to catch up to current, and then we're going to come back and talk about gods. Make a world that has an Overdark. Interesting. That'd be different. What are your thoughts on a campaign where party plays as the villains? I think it's interesting. I also think it's more interesting if you're planning follow-up campaigns where you can have those characters still be villains or overarching things that you can then come back to, and then like the new party, maybe even played by the same players, has to interact with their old characters. That could be fun. How do you think cleric and healing magics the world when the cleric can cure life-threatening wounds and diseases and high levels bring them back from the dead? I'm working on resurrection rules to use in my game, so it's not just so easy to bring people back. I have newer players in the campaign. In what order should they get source books after PHB? I plan on letting them have all books open. Either Xanathar's or Tasha's would be the next one, depending on what they want to do. What is the most ridiculous homebrew from a player? Did you as a DM, and did you regret or did you embrace it? I've never really. My players are they're not experimentative, and they're not like they don't go out of their way looking for stuff. And it kind of, like, it low-key bugs me a little bit, because I'm like, I would love for them to be, like, as invested in all of the third-party random nonsense and shit that I love. And, like, go scour the internet and find something interesting, because it's usually me. I think in my original game from like 6 years ago, we found some like homebrew feats and homebrew subclasses, and like one of the players took a couple of those feats. Skeletor's voice, He-Man, very intimidating. Counterspelling a revive. Would you do it if the enemy is really mean? 100%. The problem that I'll bring up with Counterspell is the way Counterspell's supposed to work. You don't this is something that I brought up in my Counterspell videos. You're not technically supposed to know what the spell that's being cast is. The trigger for Counterspell is when a spell is being cast. I'm starting to cast a spell. What is it? Is it Cure Wounds? Is it Disintegrate? You don't know. Your choice to counter is now when I've started the motions. I could be casting Spare the Dying on my party member, or I could be casting, Power Word Kill on you. I'm casting a spell. You have to choose. Now, if the party's down and dead, and you know they're going to go over and try to save them, you could probably intuit as the enemy what they're going to do and stop it. But for the most part, you should know. The problem is we as players, and we've kind of become conditioned to say, I'm going to cast Cure Wounds. And the DM immediately knows, and it's hard for them to pretend they didn't hear that. So really what you should be is saying, I'm going to cast a spell. And the DM has to make that choice, am I going to counterspell it or not? And it goes the other way too. As the DM, you should be like, the enemy is going to cast a spell. Counterspell, yes, no, all right, then we move on. How do you deal with finding die rolls? I feel like once I let slip for myself, I think you mean fudging die rolls. I do it occasionally. Are you more into the hand magic systems or hard magic systems or loose magic systems? And second, I don't know if you know Arcadum, but if you do, could you talk like the martial check mechanic? I don't know Arcadum. I like hard magic systems because I feel like hard magic systems work better especially for D&D, right? I have a spell, it does a thing, right? I know how the mechanics work. It's not like the Force or Gandalf, where I can do a thing and maybe it does some cool stuff, maybe it doesn't. Star Wars has a loose magic system, as we've seen with every video game, every new movie, every new whatever. The Force can do just about anything, it's just context needed. Whereas like in D&D, Cure Wounds does one thing. It cures wounds. That makes it easier, especially for the terms of a video game. I guess like pretty much any anime, most, typical shonen anime is a loose kind of magic system because like, how many different transformations can I undergo? How many transformations can I combine with this other signature attack? And let's just make it do whatever. We could just keep making shit up. So, loose, I think I enjoy watching loose magic systems happen, but I don't enjoy playing loose magic systems. I haven't checked out Arcadia 5. I was going to do a review of Arcadia 4, and 5 is already out. Top 10 best hirelings? Yeah, it's a thing I can add to the list, but hirelings are kind of funky and not handled well in 5e. Why is Strahd one of the highest rated games? Because nostalgia and people like the spooky vampire trope. Have I ever used the rank/hierarchy system that the faction agent brings into 5e? So I have enjoyed Renown because I used to play Adventures League, and Renown was a huge part of that. So I enjoyed trying to build that out, but I never got a good handle on it, so I never really followed up on it. I've ever thought about including unconventional or uncommon races playable, like playable Myconid or Sordos. 100%. I love other races, like weird races and stuff. I'm actually working on a couple myself, which I'll talk about at a point, maybe, if I ever catch up to current. How would you make monotheism work well in D&D? If I was gonna do monotheism, I think I'd have to have one god that is kind of similar to what we sort of have in the real world, but the concept of one god, but different cultures interpret that one god as a different god. So you at least have some variability, and it's one like central deity, but the dwarves think it's this god, but as the elves think it's this god, but it's really the same one, just different aspects of the same god. I am so hyped for the new He-Man, but I do feel like people are sleeping on the 2002 remake. Like it just doesn't exist. And I thought the 2002 remake was solid He-Man. Especially like the backstory of Skeletor and the way that like that was the first one to change and make Prince Adam like a little rinky-dink kid versus turning into He-Man being a big transformation. Not just like Jack's dude who wears pink to Jack's dude who wears no shirt. I thought that was great. I remember watching it was on Cartoon Network. It was really good. I just feel like why not take from that series and go forward rather than from the 1980s series and go forward. And I wish there was a way I could have asked Kevin Smith that question because I was very curious. Thoughts on guns? Yeah, guns are definitely available. I can talk about that too. I have some specifics there. Thinking on doing characters at level 0. Do I have any rules for level 0? There are rules for level 0 out there. I haven't nailed down which ones I want, but they're out there. With material components, it's easier to figure out what someone's casting. Definitely true. Do you think WotC will ever release a compendium of the PDF content? Nope. Because then you gotta go buy it. So, do you allow dragon marked races? I do. I haven't worked how dragon marks race work in my game. Problem is, when I go to release an official setting, I can't technically allow dragon marks because that's Eberron and that's WotC content. If I go to publish it as a book itself, like a campaign setting. But yeah, in the use of my games, I'm definitely down. If people want to do it, we just have to build out how that happens and how it exists. I don't have any ideas on that. That's why I haven't really messed with it. I don't shut options off to my players. I let them use whatever they want, and I just make it work. How of a hard magic system would you categorize this magic system in 5e? 5e's magic system is relatively hard. Master the game? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, I'm up posting TikToks and making live streams, so here we go. What are you gonna do, right? Use a theme on the world building you're setting. It's okay, if it's okay and you do. You know what? The current theme I did was like epic heroes and like war, basically a lot. I realized as I was building it out and playing in my game, I was like, man, I have a lot of war. Like a lot of races are at war. And I'm like, maybe I should change that. So I've been having the party sort of fix that in the first campaign so I can get away from all of the war there. I have not even touched Pathfinder in any capacity, so I can't speak to it. Any plans to cover the Dark Alliance game? I'll be honest, I was gonna pick it up and those reviews were brutal. So I'm less interested in it now. It seems like a lot of the bad reviews are on PC, so I wonder if it's the same on console. I have a friend who has, I don't have Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, he does, so I want to get his feedback on what he thinks about it. And if he thinks it's decent, then I might give it a shot. But I've seen some videos, and they're kind of like, they just don't look, it looks repetitive, which has always been what I figured it would be. Do you have an idea about a new race that's not biased on humanizing animals or monsters and are related to the main 5? Maybe? We could talk about some stuff. How would you use Renown with gods as well? Yeah, there's Theros has that piety system, so I would probably use that. Do you adjust the monsters, like giving an orc a bow, making them an orc archer? You know, I change weapons up and things like that to make it work. Do you like the new lineage systems? Yes, I do, actually. I like the concept of them. I think they have some place, and I'll show you. I actually made one for my homebrew world. So... well, HS, welcome to the channel, and yes, I am live. Hello. What happened to the site, The Trove? Don't know. I guess it's down, would be my guess. Damn, I'm really good at this format? You mean live? I mean, I guess. I'm a talker, folks. In case you haven't figured that out, I love to talk. I wouldn't say I love to hear myself talk, but I do like to talk. So if you do ever find me at a convention, like, buckle up, because I'm probably going to talk for a while unless I have shit to do. My wife either loves or hates it, because I don't shut up. What's your opinion on player characters that are royalty? So I actually have that as an issue, so I'll address that right now. So for the second campaign, which is God knows when it's gonna happen. But one of my players wants to play a king, or like a noble, or like he was a king and then he's left and now he's got like his concept was based on, well, we're gonna touch on Game of Thrones here, but Robert Baratheon's original concept of like the mercenary king. Like Robert Baratheon was the king, but he just didn't want to do that, so he wanted to like leave somebody else in charge and just like go off and just travel the world and be an adventurer and like go with his buddy, you know, Ed Stark, and go off and do stuff and like fight and travel and be a mercenary. And that's kind of the concept of what he wants. But the problem is I don't have a place in my game currently where I have like a kingdom that I can just be like, yeah, you could have been a king of this place and we'll just let you fly free. So I'm working. I was like, maybe we can make you like a high ranking noble, not a king, and change that. So do you think that a homebrew area based on Elder Scrolls Morrowind and Dark Sun dilutes each of themselves too much? I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with Morrowind or Dark Sun, but if you think it would work, give it a shot. What's your favorite plot twist to add to your games? It's kind of tropey, but my favorite plot twist is usually like the NPC that's been traveling with the party for a while is not actually who they think they are, and they're usually a bad guy. Yeah, man, Adam, I'm good. Thank you, sir. Will your setting have a variant for diverse languages? I've been toying with that from one of the races that I just designed, or sub-races that I just designed. Gunslinger question. I'll be taking the gunner feat soon to negate using an action to reload a gun. By doing this, it also renders the 15th level gunslinger feature of reloading as bonus action completely useless. My DM has allowed me to homebrew something else when I get to that level, but I'm not sure what I should do in place of that. Any ideas? You know, assuming you're talking about Matt Mercer's Gunslinger. I don't know. I saw your live tweet regarding Exandria Unlimited. Based on your first impressions, who's your favorite PC so far? I love Matt's character because there are at least 5 neurons in that skull. Yeah, so I like Exandria Unlimited. There's actually some controversy. I'm not going to dive too much into it, but so I'm on TikTok. I talked about that. There's a character, there's a creator on TikTok who's got like 1.5 million followers, and she has a character named Opal, who's been around since January. She's ordered cosplay. She's done all this stuff. And it looks like the character of Opal, which is unfortunate because I really like Opal and I really like that whole character and the whole design there. That character is apparently like very close to being inspired by or potentially unknowingly the same as the character that this creator made. And there's plenty of examples of her having and explaining this whole thing being streamed on Twitch since January. So that I thought was interesting. So, have you heard of Amelwin's Guide to Monster Hunter World? I heard about it from somebody in social media recently. But I'm not a huge Monster Hunter guy, so it doesn't like that. I tried playing Monster Hunter 1 back on the PSP back in the day, and it just didn't do it for me. Do you reflavor how subclasses branch, or are you vanilla regarding Bard, Wizard, Academics? It depends. I haven't really messed around with it too much. You want to see gem dragons? Yes, I do. Fae is intimidating. Should I do the reading and learn that world? It depends. You know, if you're going to use it a lot, then I would. Do you feel like getting rid of the race-specific attribute bonuses makes the entire race concept irrelevant? Absolutely not. I think that the only, like, basically now, aside from the cosmetics of what the race is, their livelihood, you know, how long they live, all that, it's the cool sub-features, which is always why I tried to choose races in the first place. I closed myself off from playing so many other races because of the ability scores, because of my min-max history in Dungeons & Dragons. If I wanted to play a Dex build, there was no way I was choosing a half-orc to play a Dex build, because I wouldn't want, like, while I might be able to really enjoy Relentless Endurance and, you know, Savage Criticals or whatever they're called, all of those things, maybe I would have been able to enjoy those immensely on the build I was making, but it was a strength and con build and I wanted to play a Dex character, so I would just never do that. But now with the custom lineages removing races, yeah, now or the racial attributes, I can do that, and I very much enjoy that. What do you think about WotC changed the Vistani from evil to kind to make it more PC? Dark powers granting them a plane travel. You know, I mean, we're in a different world than when a lot of this stuff was created. So you gotta walk that line and make the right choices. And that's where they ultimately landed. And I think it seems like it's received very well by the folks who would originally have intended and unintentionally been harmed by it. And if they're happy, then I'm happy. Have the player think he's a king. Yeah, that's an option. How do you know any things to avoid in world building? Just don't go too far down the rabbit hole. Okay, so this is one of the agenda items that I wanted to bring up. And somebody brought it up here, and it was about this TSR Gary Gygax nonsense. So I'm going to address it once here, and the reason that I'm not making a video, the reason that I'm not like a specific video, the reason that I'm not making any other tweets or comments is I don't want to draw attention to it and give them free publicity, because I don't. I actually am kind of a little upset in the small part that I had in kind of boosting that, because I made a genuine video saying, hey, TSR is back, which was cool. It was unique. It was something not a lot of people knew about. I scooped comicbook.com on that reveal by like 3 or 4 days. But come on, guys. Regardless, you're out publicly bashing people and like insulting people. And like, what? I mean, people approached you very professionally, in my opinion, and just asked you your opinions on stuff. And like, it seems like they're trying to build a very specific market. But the problem is, the more people that talk about it and elevate it on Twitter and other social media platforms, they are, one, they're putting the name out there, they're driving it up in the algorithm, more people are seeing it, and it's going to continue to grow and build that fan base. Like, they're going to get to see more of it and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's garbage. They seem, I didn't know that apparently there were several, unfunded Kickstarters that they started that like people donated to, and then they never produced content. It just seems like it's like openly stating that you're gonna have a theme park. That's a little funky, right? You know, it seems a little weird. To me, it seems like a nostalgia cash grab to me, right? We're gonna chime in. They did the really sketchy thing with like the TSR license, right? The trademark. I don't know if you've looked into that at all. There's some sketchy things there where they stole it from somebody else. But I think that other person kind of stole it from WotC, so I don't know. Or maybe WotC let it go. I don't know. It's just sketchy all around, right? Openly insulting his brother, Luke Gygax, who's been more relevant in the D&D community and helping out and running things like GaryCon and all this other kind of stuff. It just seems like a garbage fire. And I don't want to draw any more attention to it than I need to, because I don't want to give them the publicity. Because regardless of what you say, talking about it puts it out there, puts it in people's feeds, makes people, you know, see it and hear it, and it's just, it's not worth talking about it. They're gonna crash and burn. I'm 100% sure of that. They've alienated their entire, like, a ton of people would have probably been on board and willing to play it and see what the original minds of D&D had and all this kind of stuff. But they just shut themselves off. And they've obviously been out of the loop for a while. Dungeons and Dragons has evolved to be one of the most popular it's ever been. And you could have capitalized on that fan base from a business perspective, and you just keep shooting yourself in the foot and saying just absolute just filth and garbage, and they're not stopping either. So I just, whatever. That's just, I'm not going to deal with them. Are any spells outlawed in your world? No. No. What is your favorite location you've made for your world? I'm going to show you my map, my homebrew world map, and a bunch of stuff, and I am going to go through that eventually. Have I ever let my players use homebrew spells? I absolutely would. None of them make them. I think creating spells is one of the most satisfying things you can do. Whether it be, like, I've created homebrew spells and they've used them, but I would love, like, typically I feel like it mostly seems to fall, people want to have it be only wizards can create their own spells because they're used to that concept of named wizard spells. But I would like to have, I would encourage them to make up their own, and we'll work together and workshop them and then make them appear. Any subclasses you wish your players would play more often or never play? No, I'm okay with letting them whatever they want to do. Thoughts on condensing down races in a setting? Gnomes or halflings are the same thing. No, I just usually will kind of lock them to regions or areas for the most part, not entirely, but that will help, make it feel. But I also like to make it feel like my world is moving and realistic and people travel. So, building a city for my PCs to explore for a month or two. How much of the city should I flesh out, and how much should I leave to improv? I would check out the Lazy Dungeon Master stuff. I think that's a really good idea to get an idea how much you should be building. But enough that you feel comfortable if your players were to ask you questions that you would be willing to ask a DM were you to be in that city for the first time, that you'd have enough to back it up. Maybe a couple good shops, maybe know how many temples there are, maybe a couple like a notice board or some quest hooks and stuff like that. How's your opinion on buffing a character build if it gets too weak due to role-playing purposes, like class feats or multi-class that you result on a weaker character? I'd see how things are going with the player and then make adjustments on the fly. What kind of webcam do I recommend? If you're gonna stick with the webcam only and not go with like a camera, affordability, Logitech C920, it's still one of the best cameras out there. Hasn't changed in like 10 years. If you're looking for something a little bit better, I can't speak to some of like the newer things like the new AverMedias and the Logitech StreamCam. Obviously you want a bigger sensor, right? A webcam is trapped in a very small housing, so the sensor for the lens is very small. Won't get you a small field of view when it won't get a lot of light in there. I am using a Logitech Brio currently. I think it works pretty well, but better cameras do exist. How would you run a homebrew 5e adaptation of Spelljammer? Should I use ships from Saltmarsh? I bet you someone's done a homebrew of Spelljammer, like Spelljammer ships and stuff, so I bet you could find it. But you could start with a basis, combining the Infernal War Machines from Descended to Inverness with the Saltmarsh ships. Have I ever read the Ultimate Bestiary, The Dreaded Accursed? I have not. D&D race is now pointless, the game is bland. I think it's fine. What IRL culture/countries do you get inspiration from for your setting? I haven't really messed around with them. I usually inspire and base my towns around people that I know and use the people and friends and family. Sometimes, internet friends and stuff. I use them usually for the basis for my towns because that I feel like, especially if it's someone that I know well, it makes it easier to improvise. Right? If I base a town off of you and I know a lot about you, we've been friends for a while, and someone asks a question that I don't have something prepared for, I can think about the interactions and stuff that we've had and say, oh, well, in that one time we went out to dinner, they got this, that's going to be the main dish in the town, is their favorite food, that kind of thing. I need to read Dragonlance. Yes, I have Dragonlance. I have the books. I just have to read them. And I have the book club idea too. I'm still working on that. I just need to get a group of people, or at least 2 people, to help be a panel for the book club, pick a book, and then figure out how to go about it. I think we might do YouTube here, like we're doing right now, but do like the book club live, set up a thing like we're gonna read 2 or 3 chapters this week. Everybody go read these chapters. We'll come back and talk about it, rather than talking about the whole book, so you lose so much. And it'll basically be me and the people will talk about it, and then we'll pull questions from the chat and answer those, and then that'll be it. I love Rabbit Folk. Yeah, Rabbit Folk are pretty sweet. Do you think the WotC virtual tabletop will be made in partnership with D&D Beyond? I hope so, because I don't want to lose all the money I invested in D&D Beyond. I spent money. A lot of you have too. It would suck if they just cancel it out and then say, But from what I've heard from the folks that work at D&D Beyond, Wizards of the Coast renews their D&D Beyond license yearly. So at any point, they can pull it. I don't know. TSR said and did nothing wrong. Twitter mom mentality. Against culture wins again. I wouldn't consider it TSR until I see New Star Frontiers. Blah, 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 blah. I want to play Furbog Warlock. Any tips? Hexblade preferably. I can't imagine what pact. Well, you could tap into the Pact of the Chain Warlock, I deal with the whole foresty nature of the Druid, or I'm sorry, of the Furbog, like being in nature, and then have your like your familiar. That could be a thing. Thank you. I recommend Spectacular Settlements. I've seen Spectacular Settlements by Nord Games. I thought I bought it, but maybe I didn't. What is the most unusual, quirky feature of your setting and or residence? So one thing I did, and I don't know why I had this concept, was the concept of adding in like a signature drink for like every major city. I don't know why. I had this like concept that that's a thing I wanted to do, and like a signature alcoholic drink for every single town or like major region, you know, and they would have something. It's like a thing. I don't know why. It's like a weird thing I have, but I that's what I did. How large a scope should I focus on as a first-time DM? Should I just focus on the cities, areas players are coming to relatively soon, or should I try figuring out the scale of plot first? I mean, it's probably not a bad idea to start small, because the last thing you want to do is build out all the stuff and then never use it. You still have it that you can reference it later or use it if you need to in a future campaign. You know, as long as you've got a document and you don't lose it, it's not bad to have more, but try to focus around what you think the players are going to work on that session or in like the next 3 sessions. Do I have any fallen churches / forgotten gods? Yes, I have one, but I have to work on the name and stuff, which we can talk about. Have you seen any of the info on the Tales of Xadia system that's being made? You know, I reached out to the folks, Core RPG, I think it is, about, like, the second Tales of Xadia was dropped. I reached out to them early and was just like, hey, let's work together. And they were like, yeah, totally, let's do it, but we don't have anything to talk about, and we haven't heard anything since, so. The only spell I created was Sapling Stride, and it's like Tree Stride. Oh, a shorter distance. Okay. How do you go about making your campaign worlds feel alive and fleshed out? I tried to add unique details to the world like local superstitions, but end up forgetting about them. Yeah, so documentation is always key, right? Nothing sucks more than when you remember you designed something and then you forgot about it. So I would work on that. Just making sure you have documentation and like the important story bits written down. Passage of time usually helps a lot with making things feel alive. Like if you like have a calendar maybe and you're like ticking off the days, so you can say, all right, the party's been over here doing this thing. It's been 4 weeks. The party's been traveling. What happened in the 4 weeks elsewhere in the world, right? Maybe somebody's plot has moved along, something's fallen, someone's died, someone's not been saved, and then you can try to do that way. I'm playing a Hexblade Warlock with Shadow Dragon Patron. I'm looking to make a spell that brings together the Shadow Dragon theme. I mean, Shadow Blade sounds like a really good spell for you. I mean, that's the best one, I would say. I think I heard somewhere Spelljammer book. Yes, Spelljammer is WebDM's next book. I think if they break 250K on their Kickstarter, they're going to release a sample of the next book, which should be Spelljammery. Have you ever been playing around in a character creator and made something so ridiculous that you just couldn't play it? I combined a samurai with a Fey Wanderer and had plus 20 persuasion by level 10. Yeah, I haven't done that kind of I've done that stuff, but usually that makes me want to play it. How do I organize my book collection? By edition and then by alphabetical order. I'm about to run a game with 2 people. One of them knows the basics to the game. The other is coming in completely blind. I think you work with them. They'll come to speed pretty quick. You mentioned Adventure League. What's the highest you got for a character? Well, I feel like all of my characters are now considered legacy characters because they're all from old things and they kind of cancel those out. 18 was the highest level character I had in Adventures League, but I don't think he counts anymore because he's from like season 3. When do you think we'll get dog people? Yeah, I think we should get dog people. We've talked about that a bunch. They gave Tabaxi Dark Vision, so I feel like you gotta give dog people Dark Vision too, right? How important is it to world build the history of the setting? So I think it's important more from the lines of like what has been forgotten. So I think about like you know, you want to have forgotten lore, maybe interesting things, like deep cuts that you can pull from that are interesting, that like make the world feel huge and unique. So one of the things I often looked to was like, in the Forgotten Realms, in the Drizzt series, they're looking for Gauntlgrim, or maybe it was Mithril Hall originally, and Brunner didn't, he remembered growing up there, and he remembered they had to leave, but he didn't remember where it was. And in my head, I was like, how much time goes by before you forget something, or a culture forgets something? That's how I like to think about the history. Like, if you want to have something that's like from back in the past, that's kind of like murky and nobody really remembers how to do it, how much time needs to go by before things become like that you would forget it? Like, if a whole culture used to remember how to smith a specific type of ore, how long would need to go by before everybody forgot about that? Would 50 years? 250 years? You know, you gotta wait, like, attrition out of the generations to the point where nobody remembers how to do something. Would you really like a different official setting, such as a Victorian type world? Yeah, I would love to see something new. That's my biggest thing. I want to see what kind of because I feel like right now, I mean, like I said, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount was technically new, but it wasn't designed by Wizards of the Coast. It was designed by Matt Mercer, and it was there for years that they'd been working on, and they just adapted it into the official 5e canon. So, the better question is, what kind of design chops does WotC still have? Can they make new original settings and make them good? We haven't seen that in a while, since Eberron, and that wasn't even designed by them. It was made by Keith Baker. What kind of unique cultural traditions have you made? Unique marriage ceremonies? I have made up laws and stuff, which I can show off for some of the different towns. Like specific laws based, like that are, like what are taboos and what are allowed and different things. Cheaters lick the floor is one that came up in the course of the gameplay and became an official ruling. So if you're caught cheating at a game or something, you have to lick the floor, and that's become it developed in play, and now that is a rule of my world. How many countries? I'll show you. You talked about how you think a spell or how Counterspell would work. How do you feel about doing Arcana checks? So there's a rule in Xanathar's guide about making identifying a spell. You could make an Arcana check, and there's rules behind it about and identifying the spell. The problem is you can make the identifying check as a reaction, and if you make it as a reaction, then you can't cast Counterspell. So the only thing I could think of is you're supposed to make the reactionary cast, and then you tell somebody else who has Counterspell, and then they can do it? I don't know. So what I've been adopting in my games is you can make an Arcana check, like that says, as part of the reaction of casting Counterspell, to try and identify the spell before it's cast, based on what you know, and if it's on your spell list, I think you add your proficiency bonus or you have advantage if it's a spell you can cast, and then you can identify it, potentially make that call if you want to counterspell it. It has almost never come up, but it's something that's out there. Where are we going? Should you start world building first and then develop the story? It can be coincide. What's your opinion on someone who has a backstory? Does time travel, like they're from 500 years from the future and they were sent back? Time travel is tricky. Everybody knows that. So you just have to be mindful about it, right? You're going to deal with like butterfly effects and any of that kind of stuff? Branching timelines? How are you going to handle the time travel? Starting a new campaign, how would you introduce your campaign setting to your players? I like to have like what sometimes people call them like a campaign Bible, like a book of like general known facts that people should know. And then when you work with them, spend time with them each individually about their character and build it out. Advice for religion. If you want mysticism and diversity, add 3 origins. 2 are similar but contradictory. Yeah. Thoughts on non-violent random encounters? I love them. Sometimes I make non-violent random encounters and then the players make them violent. Have you heard if WizKids is going to make any more adult miniature Dracolich dragons? I know the green dragon mini, I have some stuff in here There's stuff in here. Some of these are under NDA, so I can't reveal what's in this box specifically. But there's some stuff coming. Would you like Planeswalker or Spelljammer 5e coming first? I bet you they're gonna. I think they're gonna combine Planescape and Spelljammer into one. Yeah, I remember that. Actually, I played in a setting. So, Devin Caspel mentions the Egypt setting. I forget what it's called, but yeah, you have a sibling dog, twin dogs, and it was like you had a benefit. I actually played at Gen Con last year. Not last year, the year before. I actually played in a streamed Magic the Gathering D&D game for the Magic the Gathering channel at Gen Con. I was one of the snake people, and two of the people in my party were those twin dogs. And Celeste Konowich, my good friend, actually DM'd that game. It was really fun. Where in the timeline is your world on technology for Warforged and firearms? So firearms exist, but I'll talk about them. And Warforged are, they're pretty much gone. Because I used basically the Terminator storyline. Dwarves created the Warforged to help them mine. And the Warforged gained sentience. And in a very much Terminator-style storyline, they revolted back and were building themselves. And the dwarves, basically, it decimated the dwarven population, but they were able to, in theory, destroy all of the Warforged. So, for example, in my world, Warforged is not really a race you can play because of that history. Flintlocks were around before plate mail, so you could throw guns. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. How would you feel about a seafaring adventure that takes place mainly on a ship? I think it could be fun. It would be very similar to a spacefaring setting, so as long as you've got variety there, it could be good. Considering almost everyone seems to want old settings, WotC might not necessarily feel the need. Well, they said they're going to make 2 new settings next year, so that's what I'm talking about. Mythic Theros book is okay, but what are the details on weapons and armor? Seems like obvious stuff that was missed. Yeah, there should be more, I think. Why do you think it's Planejammer? I have no reasoning behind that. That's just what I feel. I think it'd save them. They could hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Advice to help more shy players RP more. I want to help the players at the table feel more comfortable. So I think a lot of it depends on the characters, right? I always say there's no problem in being like your first character being you. There's no problem with it being you, or being an archetype of you, or an archetype of the class, or mimicked around a existing fantasy character, right? So that's something I would say if you're having trouble with folks getting them to RP. You have someone who's playing a fighter or ranger or whatever, and they want to basically play Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. Then just lean into it. Be Aragorn. Pretend to act like he does. And like, if they can personify themselves in how that character would act, a character that they know that's established in their head, they can build from there. Yeah, I talked about TSR earlier. I'm done with that. Dinosaurs. I love them. We talked about that. There's a video about it, but yeah. Predictions on how many years? 2 to 6 years. 6th edition. Okay. So. There's a couple other things I wanted to... we talked about TSR. How do I manage PC interactions and backstory NPCs or promote interactions? I try to have them give me as much information as they can so that if I can do justice to the backstory NPCs. More often than not, my players seem to have all of their backstory NPCs be dead. So I don't have to deal with it. 2 to 6, because that's what I've heard from the inside, or from folks that have heard from the inside. Oh, one day after you did your video about dinosaurs and my DM had a T-Rex. Well, there we go. Oh, so I wanted to talk about my Necromancer class, because I talked about how I was going to put that out on the DMs Guild, and I have some thoughts. So, we did a little reveal of my Ranger fix at the end of the last live stream. And I wanted to talk about what I was thinking about my Necromancer. So if I release it on the DMs Guild, I'm allowed to use WotC's stuff, which means I could use all the spells, the new spells, which is probably the most important thing. Like, obviously, you want a necromancer to have Dance Macabre on their spell list and things like that. But if I do that, then I publish it on the DM's Guild, then one, you lose 50% of all revenue generated goes to Wizards of the Coast in one bookshelf. You also can never publish it anywhere else ever again. So I've told some folks that I'm thinking about in the future releasing a campaign guide, probably through Kickstarter, that, you know, folks can back, and then we can make like the Nerd Immersion, well, it'll be, you know, campaign guide. And it would be kind of cool to put my my Necromancer class in that book, right? That would be pretty cool. Then you could have it in a book. If I publish it on the DM's Guild, I can't do that. If I publish it on Drive-Thru-RPG, I might be able to. But a thing that I thought would be interesting would be I could release it, and my patrons have seen it already in like draft form. But I thought what could be cool would be if I revamp the Nerd Immersion website, because it's a disaster, and I've been working with somebody to talk about that, and then basically set up a store there and just like put the PDF up for sale on my store. Then, like, in theory, 100% of the proceeds go to me, and I have 100% creative control of what I want to do with it in the future. So I think that's the route I'm going to go with my Necromancer class. Now my Ranger fix and some of the other things where I fixed 5th edition and want to release those, like, those are WotC stuff, and I'm just fixing them, so I would put them out on DM's Guild just to get stuff out there. Like, if I'm currently have another document, actually have it open on my other screen here, which is going through and updating all of the cleric domains, like all the old cleric domains that have fallen behind in power level. So I think right now I have an updated, what do I have? Updated, I think, Arcana domain and Death domain cleric. I made updates to both of those, and I was working on Nature domain at the moment. I didn't get to finish it, but I was working on those, and that I would release on the DM's Guild, because it's stuff that I don't own. I can't access it, but I could publish it through the DM's Guild. So that's just a little bit about that. I wanted to get that out of the way too. What is your most memorable moment in a campaign? I feel like we've answered this one a bunch, but let's see. There was the time I took down you know what? Maybe the time I took down a green dragon by myself, because my DM at the time was kind of a jerk. So we were playing D&D 3.5. I was playing my Hexblade character, which I really, really liked. And I just had like a random conversation where I was just like, you know, it's funny. I've been playing D&D for about 10 years at that point, and I've never fought a dragon. I've never been in a dungeon, and I've never fought a dragon in all my time playing D&D. And then my DM was like, well, a green dragon flies down right in front of you, roll for initiative. Because he was that kind of a DM, like a very combative player versus DM kind of a guy. And like, it was trying to, I think, to like put me in my place, because I was not listening to, like, I was doing what my character would do. And like, I feel like that usually has a negative connotation, but I feel like it was really justified in how things were going. And I like left, there's like one other party member, and he basically got killed, and I just met the guy, and he pissed off a whole bunch of people, and I was a mercenary, and no one was paying me, so I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna leave. This guy just got murdered by a bunch of elves. I'm out. I'm not gonna go help him. I don't even know him. And then I had said that comment, I was just like thinking about that, and then he made the dragon fly down to try to like put me in my place, and I just wrecked the dragon by myself. That was pretty memorable to me. Have I seen the shaman? I've seen several shaman classes on the DM's Guild, so I'd have to know which one. Do you think if WotC decided to make a series of Compendium books that they would do well? Yeah, I think... Chat. Put a 1 in the chat. Just type 1 in the chat if you would buy any of the following. A book that was just a compendium of spells. The existing spells from all of the different sources in one book, and new spells. Put a 2 in the chat if you would buy a book that was just a book of feats. all of the existing feats from all of the different books compiled together, and then a whole bunch of new feats. And put a 3 in the chat if you would buy a book that was just a bunch of new good DM resources and mechanics. New stuff that you would want, crafting rules, how to better homebrew stuff, how to build out spells, build out worlds, just a full new book of new DM resources. And I feel like that, which I haven't scrolled down, but I bet you that will answer pretty much everybody's question. Yeah, there we go. I think there'll be more depth addendum to 5e to make it more concrete, customizable. I think we're going to see little bits, and then they're going to use that to inform 6th edition. I looked at it briefly, the Superior Sorcerer, but I didn't get a chance to get a good look. Yeah, I wouldn't get the new spells, but there's no reason I couldn't release, I don't think, a free PDF suggesting what I would change. I think I could get away with that. Possibly, Brian Goza. That's definitely an option. Death Domain update? Yeah, I'll show it. I don't care. Revised Ranger versus Variant features video when you've expressed interest in covering older UA. Yeah, it's an option. It's something I gotta get to. I have a wandering merchant who lives in an instant fortress and teleports across plains. Grimbane's wandering emporium of magic items and oddities. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, so there you can see in the chat the amount of people that would want to buy those books. So, how'd you go about making equipment for a campaign in a modern setting? There's actually there's a Unearthed Arcana about modern equipment, actually, that the Wizards of the Coast released way early on. I would look at that and try to take it further. Any fun ways you've implemented PTSD/addiction mechanics? No, I haven't really messed around with that. There's that's something that's interesting that could be in that DM book we were talking about. There was a compendium of just races or subclasses. Yeah, people would buy that too, right? I mean, that's what they started doing towards the end of 3.5 because there was so much stuff. Like, they had a spells compendium, a magic item compendium, and most of those things, when they released the compendium version, were the most up-to-date version of that. So, like, if the spell appeared multiple times over the course of the book, the version in the spell compendium was, in theory, the newest, most up-to-date version. They also released a rules compendium, because there were so many rules. I said it before, there was a thing called Swift Actions in 3.5, which was basically the equivalency of bonus actions now. That was not standard in the game when the game released. So if you want to think about how wonky that would be, they released an entirely other action mechanic later on in the game. I think it'll be much closer. Yeah, I don't think it'll be more like 3.5 to what 3 is. Because they said it's supposed to be backwards compatible. I don't know how it can be unless it's close. Have you heard of the Star Wars 5th edition conversions? Yes, I have. It's very well done, I think. I mean, I've done several videos on stuff from 3.5 to 5e. But probably the crafting would be one, and the magic item, like buying and selling. Hi, Beard Bear. Hello. Thank you for the super chat. Do you also feel like 5e is really slowing down? I think it's still interesting. Well, it's weird. People feel like 5e is slowing down, but they're increasing the book cadence. It was like 2 or 3 books a year a couple years ago. Now it's 5. So it's hard. Like in like a way, I feel like it's slowing down, but I also wonder if we only feel like it's slowing down because we know that a new edition is kind of on the horizon. I'd be skeptical, but I know there's some things coming later this year. Keep your eye on for. I'll be doing full coverage of it, so keep your eye out. Have you been playing or wanting to play other systems in 5e? No, never got to play the Grung Rogue. No, I mean, I just have so much stuff in 5e that I'd like to play. I said before I'd love to play Changeling, the Chronicles of Darkness, Changeling the Lost. I would love to play that. I'd be willing to try other things though. I just, I have a YouTube channel primarily based on D&D. So, like, it doesn't behoove me to play too much outside of that. Hot take, once a user-created platform becomes popular, its quality takes a spike. Accurate. Let's ever explain why they got rid of Tandem Tactician feat instead of just reworking it? They ended up giving the Hobgoblin... No, I don't think they did. In your opinion, what criteria would a quest or quests have to fill to give a level up using the milestone system? I mean, if it's something tied to the player's backstory and it's really significant or impactful, or if it really changes the scope of, something like overarching, whether it be like the world, the local, stuff like that. Yeah, Mythic Monsters, a book of Mythic. There's some DMs Guild Mythic Monsters. Lemonade Mochi is kind of what you're referencing. They broke the top 100 of all books on Amazon, yeah. 6e is supposed to be compatible with 5e. Could that be when player's handbook? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I think 6e is going to likely be, is all of the stuff that we keep complaining about not being updated, not fixing certain little things, like not having... Great example. All of the new like feats and racial abilities that give you access to a spell, they all now say you can cast this spell once per long rest. You can also cast this spell with any spell slots you have. Meaning, like, if my race gives me Cure Wounds, and I have that, and I have spell slots, I can cast Cure Wounds using my spell slots. That's how all of the new abilities, feats, and things, that's how they're all worded. That would be something I think they'd go back and adjust for all previous things, as an example. Yeah, but I think, like, any of the tweaks were like, why does all the new sorcerers or the new rangers get spells, but the other ones don't? I think that's going to be, I think, the largest, which is kind of bullshit if you ask me. I think that's going to be the big push for 6e, is going to be all of the shit that they worked out and figured out that's way better now, like the new pet mechanics and how that stuff's handled, they figured out now. 6th edition is going to be basically reprinting everything, but with all of those updates applied. That's what I think. Could you see training a rabbit to do combat? Could it get a level of the warrior psychic? Yeah, man, sure. Why not? Do you have a video about 6e? I have a video. I think I have a 5.5e book or video somewhere. Let's see. I call it 5.5e. I have a video called New Head of the D&D RPG Team. It may be a D&D 5.5e from a year ago. That's what it's called. Everybody, I said 2 to 6 years. Everybody's saying 2024. So, do you think WotC will continue making alternative covers for most books? Maybe not all. Just want to know how you implement inspiration to your games. So I use the inspiration cards. I showed them off in, I think, one of my videos. I have these inspiration cards. It's a deck of 52 cards, and each card, it works like a deck of cards, and each one has a little +1, and then also like an ability. And when I hand my players inspiration, I give them the card. They can either use the inspiration to make a reroll, they can use the inspiration to add the numerical value, which goes from +1 to +3, or they can use the inspiration to use the mechanic described on the card. Interested in a custom monk entirely dragon breath weapon themed? Could be interesting. Because I don't sleep, Noah, that's why. Would you build a T-Rex mount with magical... How would I build a T-Rex mount with magical barding? I'd probably just make barding that works like just a T-Rex, and you just write it. Maybe you make it, scale it down a bit. You've punched AL before. Have you seen the new season 10 rules? Easy targets. I haven't looked at it too much, but yeah, I've seen there's some interesting stuff going on there. Follow up with what I said about 5e slowing down. Do you think the newer books feel somehow lazier? Yeah, Van Richten's guide feels like a rough draft. 100%. A lot of that stuff feels like it was thought of, or like casually thought of, and then they're just like, yeah, throw it in the book. Sounds good. Definitely. Would you be interested in seeing a new martial class in this theoretical 6E, or do you think... I'm always interested in new things, new options. It just has to be unique enough to make sense. Yeah, Dave, I've been playing in person for a while. We took a while off for the pandemic, but then, you know, we'd all been social distanced, staying home. Folks were vaccinated, so we've been playing together for a while. But we're kind of in a funky spot, unfortunately. We had 4 players, then that went down to 3 players. But now, unfortunately, due to some health issues and stuff, one not COVID related, but one of our players' fiancés is having some issues, so we are not playing currently. That's why I made a TikTok about it, but I'll tell you guys here that we're looking to do a new interim, like 2-person campaign. So we're dealing with that. We're working on some like that'll be actually, I think the session 0 for that will be this Tuesday. It might even be streamed here on YouTube. We haven't decided that yet. What were your best moments session as a DM? Was it one where everything went according to plan? No, usually the best ones are when it goes not according to plan. Do you, when DM, allow players to bank inspiration to get pluses to add to advantage rolls? We also have a donation mechanic in our game that like viewers can donate to add basically rerolls, and if they bank up enough. Have you ever seen penny arcades like the C Team, where they get charges to build up that they are able to use for a reroll or to eventually activate an ultimate ability? We have that as a mechanic in our games. I don't have any plans to go to Gamehole Con, but I might look into it. I don't have... currently, my plans are Gen Con and PAX Unplugged. I think sci-fi can make a... I think sci-fi can appear in fantasy worlds as long as it's handled well. Have you ever had viewers campaign? Like a campaign with just viewers? The closest thing I've done is early last year, this guy's from Start Playing reached out to me, which is a website where you can go and like buy, basically, essentially rent a DM or rent, set up a campaign where you can play through a game with a DM. And I had an ongoing rolling campaign set in my homebrew world. So they were all viewers as well, but they basically would rent or, would pay by the seat. I was doing it every Friday night. I was having that, and those folks, we'd have 4 or 5 people in there playing every week. It was really fun. But no, I haven't done like a just viewers campaign aside from that. Especially not a campaign. The problem with that is you don't know what you're going to get, right? I could say like, yeah, well, I'm open spots for a bunch of viewers. Some folks might get it. We're streaming live on the internet. There's things you can and can't do. Other folks don't. And then you have to worry about technical issues and things like that. So, why does AL try to discourage new players? Don't know. Have you tried Tailspire? No, but I've heard about it. I've been playing steady since '84. Since when did you initially start playing? 3/3.5 in 2004 was when I started playing. What do you think your best DM skill is, or what part of DMing do you think you're good at? Winging it and not preparing and making it up on the fly, because that's usually what I do. I have the best intentions to prep, and that I don't. Yeah, Dave Rosser, ours started off as a charity mechanic, and then we just kind of rolled it. It like started off with Extra Life, and then we just made it a generic mechanic of the game. How do you feel about futuristic weapons? I don't really use them, but if you want to, I think that's cool. What are my favorite con experience? Well, I've been doing cons for a long time, and I've been doing them a lot before I used to do D&D. I used to do... If you scroll back, like the first video on the channel is like, we're at Wizard World Philadelphia, 2012. So I used to do a lot of cosplay conventions and stuff like that. I had a lot of fun doing that. I don't know, I just usually have a lot of fun just like hanging out in the room with like my roommates or whoever's renting the rooms with me, and just like playing D&D for no one but ourselves is usually really fun. Because usually when I get together at a convention to play D&D with folks, we all stream, we all do podcasts, we all do something. And sometimes it's nice to just unplug and just like play a local game of D&D just for fun, just for us, with no expectations. Do you think that 5e needs to add more attack options for marshals? I think it's okay. I just need, you just have to... I'm not entirely sure how they would do that. Any thoughts on a way that epic content could be introduced? I don't think they're going to introduce epic content in 5e, because I think they weren't sure how it was going to go, so they didn't really balance the game to high levels, but I bet you 6e will have epic content. The new timeline, what happened to Chongo? Chongo is still out making music, doing the Chongo thing, just didn't meet up. He's still changing the course of music all over the place. Do you do anything special for inspiration points other than the cards that I mentioned earlier? No, just that. If you could go back, what would you have chosen a different college major, and how did your college experience influence the trajectory of your life? Wow, deep questions, guys. No, I don't think I would. The only thing I would have done was I would not have gotten my first girlfriend 2-3 days before I left for freshman year of college, because I drove home every weekend my freshman year of college like a fucking idiot. And then she cheated on me anyway, so yeah. my grandmother passed away, like, who I was super close with, like 2 weeks before I left to go to college, or a week before I left to go to college. So I didn't even actually get to go to like the funeral, because it was my first day of like college classes. And I was in like a triple that was supposed to be like a double room that got turned to a triple because of over acceptance. And I was driving home every weekend to go see this girlfriend, because I finally had a girlfriend. And it completely ruined my college experience. Like, it didn't ruin it, it just wasn't a real experience. So I didn't feel like I got my true, like, good, have friends at college, have a ton of fun, don't want to go home, love it so much college experience until my sophomore year. Which, like, would have been, like, not doing great on your grades and stuff would have been acceptable as a freshman. But, like, I was doing that as a freshman and then as a junior, or as a sophomore. And, like, by the time I got to be a senior in college, I like end of junior year, senior year, I was, like, in my prime. I had all of my shit figured out. I was getting, like, A's in all my classes. And had I just ratcheted that back 1 year, my junior year and my senior year, my GPA would have been a lot higher. But no, I enjoyed my geology degree. I mentioned that I didn't like my paleontology professor in my dinosaurs video. But, like, I figured out his number by the time I was a junior, like what I needed to do to just have him get off my back. But no, I don't think I would have changed it, because it made me who I am today. I wouldn't, if I didn't go to college and do the things I did, I would not probably be doing this right now. Because for you guys may not expect this, because you guys only know me from the internet, but I was super shy, super introverted, through like all like most of my report cards in like elementary school, middle school, and even high school were like, Ted knows all the content, but he doesn't participate in class, because I was always like reserved, never wanted to raise my hand, didn't want to speak up, none of that. It wasn't until I got to college, and it was my sophomore year of college. I had my all the friends on my floor, and I had two really close friends who were also kind of shy and kind of introverted. And I remember the three of us were all hanging out on like a Saturday, and we didn't know what we were gonna do. We were all sophomores, and we're like, what should we do? And like, I had an epiphany in that moment that, like, oh my God, if I don't take charge and like start thinking about and like kind of steward this group and like take things over and become the person who's making the decisions and figuring this stuff out, we're just gonna sit in this room and do nothing all weekend, because no one will speak up because everyone's so introverted. So I sort of became who I am today because I needed to help push the group along. And then I was like, you know what, guys, why don't we head down to the store and like maybe we'll go get some pizza and then like come back and we'll play Smash Brothers or something. And like that started. So then it became like, Ted, what do you think we should do? And like then whatever I was kind of into, the group started to get into, and we started doing MMOs and modifying Nerf guns and doing all this kind of crazy stuff. And that became like, then we all got another like a suite together in sophomore, and it became like a whole thing. And that's all because of my college trajectory. So there you go. Longer answer than you probably were expecting, but there you go. You deal with real world concepts like hunger and encumbrance. Encumbrance, nobody ever seems to deal with. I'd like to do it, I just don't have a good way of tracking it. I guess D&D Beyond does help. And I started using the Wilderness Kit to track food for like long trips. Have you ever had a villain that was using the Mystic? No, because Mystic is too complicated to just have as a random NPC. What would you like a supplement for 5e with advanced realistic rules? Yeah, I would love that, absolutely, actually. Any tips on DMing Icewind Dale? Watch The Thing. Get some ideas for like sowing unrest in the party. Thoughts on the request, a recent resurgence of interest in Planescape? Yeah, I think it'll come back in some form. Originally, Fighter was supposed to be Battlemaster Maneuvers based in the Bait class. That's interesting. Would have been fun. What's the most important part of world building? That you enjoy what you're doing when you're building the world? Have you read Angry GM stuff? I feel like I have, but I'm not too familiar. Are those twin scimitars drizzed? Yes, they are. They are Twinkle and Icing Death. Yep. Emphasize with that rough patch. Sometimes dice. Yeah, it is what it is. Young dwarves are shaving their beards and growing fancy mustaches. Older dwarves curse them, calling them lipsters. I did become the party face. Accurate, yeah. That's the inspire. Yeah, I mean, it. When you think back about it, and it's also an interesting genesis of myself as like a person in the way I play games. Because I always used to be like the stealthy ranger back in the distance, shooting the bow. In the back line, that was like the kind of character I would play in any games we would ever play. And in the process of like that, and then like post-college and getting into like MMOs and becoming like a guild leader and stuff like that, I transitioned away from being like the backline sniper type to becoming like the upfront tank healer type, because I liked being there to help people and like to be there, the rock for the party or the group of friends or whatever it is, take the hits, bring people back, whether it be as a healer or as like a tank. And that's like, it's the transition of the way I play games is also like the transition of my personality, which I thought was kind of cool. When I run a session as a DM, how long are them? Roughly 3 hours. I don't plan them currently, which is part of my problems, or not, depending on how you look at it. Is making evil gods a bad thing? I don't think so. I think it's okay. We talked about the Gary Gygax or the TSR thing earlier. Do you care about stuff like realistic climate patterns? I do, but like it's not super useful. Like I feel like it doesn't. The players don't appreciate climate change and meteorological data and stuff like that. But you started in 05-ish. When was your first con and what was it? My first con was Wizard World Philadelphia 2010, maybe 2011. That's where I actually met Bruce Campbell right here. That was my first convention. Because I used to get dressed up and do cosplay. You guys have seen the Ghostbuster stuff and things like that, and that's what I used to do before I did like D&D cons and stuff. I used to just go to cosplay cons, Dragon Con, Super Mega Fest, Rhode Island Comic Con. Used to do PAX East as like a combo video game / costume thing, all that kind of stuff. How does Sean roll solo on D100s? Yeah, it's his thing. He's got a thing with Mishra. He rolls real low, and he always gets Divine Inspiration. What's my favorite non-magical weapon? Yeah, Double Scimitar by far. Do you think Counterspell is overpowered? No, I love Counterspell. See my video. I love Counterspell, and it should stay. Currently playing an Arcana Cleric. Any chance? Yeah, I'll show it right now. The new room is very well built. Yeah, it'll probably make a comeback. Have I played Dark Alliance? No. I'm a little skeptical based on the reviews, but I might give it a shot. I'm scared of making the game hard until my party gets Revivify. Sure. What's the highest number of counterspells that got casted in one round? Spell? Counterspell. 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 So like 5 or 6 is the most I think we've had. Jordan's seen it in his game because we had 3 characters that had Counterspell in the party. How many TPKs have I had? 2. One that I caused and one that I was a part of. If you're not enjoying your game as a DM, you're part of the audience of your game too. If you're not enjoying it, time to make a change. Okay, so let's show off my couple of things here. We were gonna get to world building at some point. We never did that yet. We talked about it a lot. All right, let me. I don't think TPKs are bad. Some people don't like them, but you know, it is what it is. We don't want that. Oh, no, don't do that. This one. All right. So you guys want to talk about a little bit about the updates that I made to some of the domains. So someone asked about updates to the Arcana domain. So here they are. They're also available on D&D Beyond. You can search this one on D&D Beyond. But yeah, I changed a couple of the spells out. I changed the stuff in red is what I changed, right? So I kept some of the spells, but I swapped out one of the second level spells for silence, one of the third level spells for haste, one of the fourth level spells for Odaluk's Resilient Sphere, and one of the ninth level spells for telekinesis. And then I basically just changed the second level thing because it was kind of weird. I basically copied the Oath of the Watchers Paladins Channel Divinity, Abjure the Extraplanar, because it adds more options and it doesn't affect one creature, which is what this is right here. It's just basically verbatim copying that over. And other than that, I kept everything else the same. So that's Arcana domain updates. Pretty simple. And then I have the Death domain here. So scroll right down to it. So here you can go. I changed a couple of the spells out. I changed one of the third levels to be Spirit Shroud. That's one of the new spells from Tasha's Cauldron. And I changed one of the fifth levels out to be Enervation. That's from Xanathar's Guide. So I decided that this class wasn't sure really what it wanted to be. So I changed a little bit about the Reaper first level ability because it gives it martial weapons. So it looks like it kind of wants it to be a melee fighter, but it also wants it to be a caster type. So I tried to keep it relatively the same. So I changed Reaper and I made it rather than, because Reaper originally was when you target one creature, the creature next to it has to be within 5 feet of it to take the secondary damage. So I made it so that when you learn a necromancy cantrip, when you cast a necromancy cantrip that normally targets only one creature, you can instead target 2 creatures within range. So rather than one creature and a creature within 5 feet of it, it's now 2 creatures within the range of whatever the cantrip is. I think that makes it significantly stronger. Gives you a little bit of options because you have Chill Touch, you have Toll the Dead, and you have Sapping Sting from Explorer's Guide to Wildland. You have 3 cantrips. And twinned Toll the Dead, not being next to each other but being at a distance, is pretty useful. Touch of Death, I changed this up here. When you hit a creature with a melee attack, you can use your Channel Divinity to deal extra necrotic damage. It now deals 2d10 plus your cleric level, as opposed to 5 plus twice your cleric level. I did this to make it similar to the light domain ability, but because it's when you hit a creature with a melee attack, you could wait until you crit, and then the dice will double. So that would go from 2d10 plus your cleric level to 4d10 plus your cleric level. So I thought that would help a little bit to even it out, make it a little bit stronger there. For Inescapable Destruction, I basically changed it to be Elemental Adept necrotic damage. So necrotic damage you deal ignores resistance to necrotic damage. That's a little redundant. In addition, when you roll necrotic damage, you can treat any 1 on a damage die as 2. And I changed it because it said specifically necrotic damage you deal with a spell or your Channel Divinity feature. I just made it all necrotic damage so that it will also synergize with Divine Strike, the level 8 ability, which is when you hit it with a weapon attack, you can deal an extra d8 necrotic damage, and then at 14, you can deal 2d8 necrotic damage. So this now functions on that. So even if you're swinging your weapon and it deals necrotic damage, it ignores resistance. And if you roll a 1 on those damage dice for your necrotic damage when you swing your weapon, it treats the 1s as 2s. And then lastly, for the final ability, I just changed it to be, it used to say when you cast a spell that targets only one creature and it's a spell of 1st to 5th level, the spell can instead target a creature within 5 feet of the other one, similar to the previous Reaper. So I just expanded it. It's your level 17 ability. It should be better than only dealing with your 1st to 5th level spells. So I made it that it can target any spell that you cast that deals necrotic damage. A necromancy spell that would normally target one creature can now target 2 creatures within range, and it's not limited by level. Because I looked at it, there's not that many necrotic damage spells in the game, and there's not that many single target necrotic damage spells. So this would kind of give you a little more versatility, I think. So that's my changes to the Death Domain Cleric. There you go. Oh, I'm like covered up by my logo here. Let's move me up. So, there you go. That's my changes to Death Domain. I hope that helps. And then I started on Nature Domain, but all I got was the new spells. That's all I did, was changing out some spells for it. Yeah, Finger of Death is there. It would count for it. So, but it's your level 17 ability. I think I think it's okay. It might be overpowered. I'd have to play it and see. But you also don't have that many spell slots of high level spells either, so that's something to consider. Yeah. So I tried to make Death Domain better at killing, because that's what its whole thing is supposed to be about. And then, yeah, this is all I did for Nature. I didn't get to go through it at all, because Nature is kind of... Oh, the only thing I did for Nature was I changed out it from weapon damage at level 8, Divine Strike, to Potent Spellcasting, because I think it wants to be more of a spellcastery type. Because that also means when you choose your Druid cantrip, you could choose a Druid cantrip that does damage, and then you could add your Wisdom modifier to the damage of that Druid cantrips. So like if you took, say, Primeval Savagery, where you like claw people and deal acid damage, you could add your Wisdom modifier to that damage and increase it, which I thought would be cool. Or like double Wisdom modifier if you took Shillelagh. And then I changed out the spells to be more naturey, because they've added more nature spells going on. But yeah, the Channel Divinity and the level 17 ability for the Nature Domain are just garbage, so they need to be completely reworked. Because this, like, what animals and plants are you charming at 17th level that you're going to use in any way? So I got rid of that. I need to change that. But anyway. What's your favorite Druid subclass? I think it's Wildfire Druid. I'm pretty sure. Have I ever played in an epic level campaign? No, I have not. I played in a level 20 one-shot. That's about as close as I've ever done. Okay. So, no, I didn't. I kind of like Life Domain as it is, so I left it alone. I didn't put it in here because I didn't get to Light. I didn't do Light Domain, but I would give Light Domain probably Produce Flame or Firebolt as a spell instead of Light. I'd give it one more damaging cantrip because I think it could use it. Yeah, Nature Domain. Yeah, it could have been purely for using Shillelagh. But you know, if you don't want to deal with that, they shouldn't be. One of my rules of kind of game design when it comes to me working on stuff is if it shouldn't be a choice, don't make it a choice, right? So your point about like you always figured that the concept for Nature Domain was that Nature Domain clerics should take Shillelagh as the Druid cantrip that they pick. If its intention is for you to pick Shillelagh, don't give it an option. Just say you get Shillelagh. Same thing with like Eldritch Blast. Almost all of the good invocations come from Eldritch Blast or tied to Eldritch Blast. More or less saying that you should take Eldritch Blast as a warlock. In my mind, Eldritch Blast should be a class feature. You learn Eldritch Blast and other spells. Like, it shouldn't be like I have to choose to pick Eldritch Blast, which functions off so many of my invocations, or not be as viable. You know what I mean? What are my favorite snacks? I saw that come through. Yeah, my favorite snacks would definitely be, I'm a big fan of gummy anything. Like, I love gummy bears and gummy worms and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a big fan of anything gummy related. I don't like chocolate, so nothing chocolate. White chocolate is okay, but I don't like chocolate. I don't have an epic story or some crazy situation as to why I don't like chocolate. I used to absolutely love it. It was one of my favorite things in the world. And then my taste buds just changed, and now I don't enjoy chocolate anymore. Sometime in college, I don't have, like I said, I wish I had some crazy story I could tell you about why I hate chocolate now, but don't know. Just taste buds shifted, and I don't enjoy chocolate. Can we see my 4 elements fix? I've done my 4 elements fix. Yeah, Hunter's Mark. Yes, exactly. Slimy. Same thing. If Hunter's Mark is something you should be taking as a ranger, make it a class feature. You know what I mean? I must have offended the gods somehow. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's why I don't like chocolate anymore. Like I said, my graduation cake from high school was chocolate cake with a chocolate pudding center with chocolate buttercream icing. And it was to die for, and I loved it. And I remember how much I loved it. And some point between my freshman year and my junior year, I just stopped liking chocolate, and I just went hard vanilla. Hex, yeah, could also be a warlock class feature too. Yeah, you're right, Fabian. It's less than Hunter's Mark, but yeah, it kind of works like that. How did I get into woodworking? My dad is super handy. He's done everything. My dad fixed everything in the house, fixed everything with the cars. My dad is super knowledgeable about all sorts of things. So growing up, he would always want to teach me stuff, and we'd work together on different things. And I think one of the things that started it was we built a coffee table in my for the basement, because I used to hang out in my parents' basement too. We built a coffee table in my parents' basement. We had this old shitty table that we used to sit on all the time, and it broke eventually. So we needed to make a new table. So we built one together, and that kind of really jump started my woodworking. That got me into it, and I made a DVD rack at home, and then I ended up bringing that when we moved into a condo. And then finally, when we moved into the house before this house, I started building all the furniture in there because I didn't like what options were out there, so I built my own. James, I'm doing good, thank you. Why is Cleric / Paladin spells free while Warlock has to choose? Yeah, that's also a stupid thing. I hate that about Warlocks having to choose their extra expanded spells. It's the only class that has that. So I would just get rid of it and give them the spells. They still are limited in their spell slots. Just give the Warlock all the expanded spells. I don't care. I think that's what I do in my games. Warlocks get access to their full expanded spell list. They don't have to pick them. It's just like domain spells or circle spells or oath spells. Warlocks get them. Most of the game, they're still going to have 2 spell slots, so who cares? I'm doing a full level 20 campaign. I started Nature Cleric, but DM let me switch to Peace. Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, full-on intervention all the time. Awesome. What's the difference between Hunter and Foe Slayer other than their name and traits? Those subclasses aren't that easy to differentiate. It's true. There are high elves. Are there low elves? What is a halfling half of? Do garden gnomes exist? I've seen some folks do Christmas elves, like Yule elves, they call them usually. Yule or Yuletide elves. I thought that was an interesting concept. You start your worlds with a single town / simple starting point or a bigger scale. So, all right, let's dive into some world building. All right, how about that? Let me jump over and I'll show you. I've got a Google Drive where I keep some stuff, and so I'll go over there and I'll show you some maps. How about that? I don't prep. That's the other thing I've been talking about. I don't really campaign prep because at this point, like my game, I know my players well enough. I plan to in campaign 2, but I haven't done much in the first campaign. All right, so we sign into Incarnate real quick. Okay. So I'm here on incarnate.com, where I've made some maps, a variety of different kinds of maps. I need to adjust these because they added so much. So here's my world map. Well, here's where I started, right? I started with this, okay? Get this out of here. Get out of here. Look at all these updates. Oh man, look at all this shit they added. Holy cow. So this is how I started. And I started, unfortunately, with like the old version of Incarnate, so I needed to keep adjusting things and keep shifting things. But this is what I made as the base map. I was drawing this. I remember my wife was pregnant. I was working on this. So you can see a lot of stuff here. And this is, you can see I have some notes over here, what the different symbols mean, what the populations are for the different things. What I had done was tried to figure out, like, trying to figure out a scale and how big is this thing, and I keep flip-flopping on the scale. I thought I had one on here, but maybe I deleted it. I did used to have a scale on here, but I kept flip-flopping because I was like, if this is the main continent, what do I need to, what do I need to have? How much time do I want to have people traveling around? So I started thinking about stuff that I liked and what would I want to have. Okay, so I was like, well, I like the concept of like a fire island chain. I like the concept of like a jungle. I had a big thing that I love gnolls as a monster, so I was like, I want to have something to do with gnolls, so I made this gnoll wood up here. And then I was like, ooh, a swamp would be cool with some old ruins to have that. And I was like, oh, a forest for like elves. And then like I had come up with this city down here. And I was like, oh, maybe like an island or maybe like a permanently, and I just started going, like making stuff that I thought was cool. And then that's where like the stars started to come out, and I said, okay, let's start building things out. Let's put some cities in some places. What do we want to do for these? And then how do I want to go about it? And then it's just like, okay, you start doing all this, and it's just like, well, how many cities should there be, right? If this is, if it's going to take you a while to get from one place to another, and you lock down your official scale, okay, how long should it take to travel from here to here? How many days? What do we think? And then it's just like, is there going to be nothing? It's just open trail here. Should you have more cities? And then there's always the part about like, sometimes you want to drop in a city like these two here, like Rufford and Sapperton up here. These were like random cities that I dropped in when the party was traveling. So I had to add them to the map. So like the map was ever evolving. And some of these other stuff I added, like Kingsdale I added after the fact, Staghold, a bunch of these I added after. So this is kind of how I started with this. A general idea, just playing around with the different functions in Incarnate to get what I liked. And then I started thinking about like, okay, well, where do I think the game's going to start? I knew it was going to start up here at Bricken's Homestead. And I said, okay, well, I need to start building what's around here. And then I said, okay, well, what do we have going on here? And then I found like a one-shot that I wanted to start off the session with. And I was like, oh, it's going to take place in the dwarves. Where do the dwarves live? And I was like, well, it would be good if they lived somewhere near Bricken's Homestead. So like under these mountains, right? There's like Bricken's Homestead, and that's how you get there. Sure, I can make a video on Incarnate. I'd need to catch up on it myself, personally. And I was like, okay, we can get there. And then some of the stuff has been added after the fact. And then I may have to make a whole dwarven underground city, which I never finished drawing out. Trying to come up with like who the player in the parties were going to be, and then what I needed to add. So then I also told you that I started naming cities after people in my lives to help determine how things would work. So this one here was named after my one friend Katie, been here, and she designed the whole town. So everything behind this town she made up. And then Westwick over here is based, this is the one that's based around my son. And my first son anyway, because I made this when he was, you know, when my wife was pregnant with him. But as he started to grow up, I built this one around him. And it's basically all the stuff that he liked when I started doing the world building. So this is the town where the dinosaurs live that I told you about in the dinosaur video, where dinosaurs are the beasts of burden of that town. So that's this entire town right here. Like that's where this is all dinosaurs, and there are like train tracks with like trains to move stuff around, dinosaur beasts of burden, all sorts of stuff like that. There's a lot of really great tools there as well, because he was big into like building and fixing things. And then let's see. This is a town that I built with Katie as well, as we were talking about like backstories for our characters in one game we were in. Dethair is built around my friend Jake, who I usually play games with. So Jake is a huge fan of like combat in D&D. He's also a huge fan of Smash Brothers. He also loves dad jokes and coffee. So that's how I built this town, right? They respect and love a good dad joke. Coffee is one of their major exports, and they have no shortage of fighting pits where the party can choose to fight a variety of different things. They can fight other parties, they can fight monsters, and I named all of the different arenas, the major arenas, after the variety of different Smash Brothers games. So that's how that worked. This city here, this isle here, this islet, is named after my sister. And I named this city Wispdell after Plasma Wisp from Kirby Superstar, which was her favorite character to play when we played. My sister loves Halloween, so I decided that this town is perpetually trapped in like a state of autumn, and every month they have a Halloween celebration, because that's something that she likes, right? Up here is Downton Abbey. This is named after my friend Sean. And Sean... I picked this because when we were kids, he used to do martial arts. So this is like the monk monastery. And he loves Mountain Dew, and he loves Harry Potter. So I had all of the different monks. The 4 different monk schools are split up basically into 4 different Hogwarts houses, essentially, covering different aspects and disciplines of the monk tradition. And the colors... and the names are themed after Mountain Dew. So there's and his favorite flavors of Mountain Dew. So there's green, red, white, and black are the 4 colors of the different robes that people wear there, and they represent different things. That was kind of a thing I did there, right? And then so on and so forth. You get the idea as we move along here. Gouger was named after my friend Pat, and it's full of a bunch of people who are stoners, and all they do is smoke weed all day, basically, or Gouger leaf, as it's known in this world. And this is kind of how everything started with this. And I started just slowly doing that, adding things, adding people and locations and things as we move along. And then I decided that, like, this is great, but, like, I would like to have, like, there's no, like, where do the waters go? Where do you go if you leave, if you get on a boat? So then I decided to make this, which was a world map. Which, again, at the time... they didn't have the option. Now they have the option in Incarnate where you can start with a map and like connect them all together. So they didn't have that. So I basically redrew my entire first campaign map here, rather than just like copy and pasting. I redrew the whole thing. We can talk. Yeah, Kingsdale is one that me and the Twitch chat built together, and then I made all of these other little continents here. Right. So I started with some of these, and some of these I haven't even finished building out at all, but I started making these. So I think I only have, like, I think this is the only one I have actually built out is, like, Norin, which is this other continent, and I built this one. Right, so I have another continent to the south. This one actually has a scale. I don't know if that scale is actually accurate, but here it is. So that was another, like, thing I built, and I have this city because I built this for another campaign that a DM never used. She was like, hey, you can build a city if you want. And I was like, cool. And I made the entire city for the campaign that I was playing in. And then she never used half of the stuff that I made up. So that was kind of a bummer for me. So I just like, oh, I'm going to reuse that. I made it. So. And then I started taking like this map that you see here and breaking it down and zooming in and building different regions out further, which again would have been great, but that was not functionality they had at the time. So, for example, you can see the bold lands right here. This is where I talked about how I have kobolds fighting. This is where all the kobolds pretty much live. The Urdian Conclave up here has the smart kobolds, and the Kingdom of Swold is the Swobolds, which is something I designed that's in Kobold's Press's Creature Codex, and they fight over this Wormgate Bridge in the middle. No one knows why. And I built this map, showing it off a little bit further, kind of diving in, and get a little bit closer and see different like outlying cities, and then, you know, they're very much a city on the north, and then these are very much like, they're very bro-ish, like kind of like a Burning Man situation, like, but with bros all the time, where they like live in tents and like hang out. And they have, for example, we talked about alcohol earlier on. So like they are the brewers and creators of Bold Light, which is essentially an analogy for Bud Light, and it is something that is available everywhere in the world. And that's how they fund their ongoing war efforts, is by selling that to the masses. So that is very like high level stuff, how I messed around with world building and maps and things, right? We can see here's another one where I did a little zoom in, started building stuff out. Yeah, I'll go for a little while longer, Matrox, probably. And then I can show you guys here. Here's like a Google Drive folder where I keep stuff. So if I were to go and take a look at this, that one city we saw on that one continent, this is what I had built out. Here's the history of the continent, geography, the population, with a graph showing a breakdown of the different races that were found there, how the government works, the military. Here's a little bit about the economy, the names of the coinage of the town, the religion. Here's the laws that I built out for the town, different places of interest, all the different shops and things within the town. And then like the family houses, temples, places of interests, and then holidays. How long do you world build usually before starting a campaign? Well, I had started this, and then we just ended up starting to play, and I continued to build along. So I'm going to continue to build out this world, because this is the one that I've made. So I basically took like a year off of running games and let my other players run games that I get to play in while I built this in the background. Let's see. So here's Bricken's homestead. We can go look at this one. So I got a little bit about the history here. Here's the geography again. We talked about the population. Government. Here's the military. Economy. Here's the laws that we have here, right? So I made this one was all based around a hero who retired from adventuring, and he retired and just wanted to live by himself, but people found where he was, and then they basically kind of built the town around them. And then in the process of him not wanting to be responsible for the deaths of all these people trying to live in an inhospitable thing, this is a very frontier town, kind of Alaska style. He basically started teaching people things, and essentially they took all of his ideals as basically like gospel and made them into rules. So this was a code that he lived by, that they then adopted to be the rules of the city, for example. So don't inquire about a person's past to judge them for who they are today. Defend yourself whenever necessary. Look out for your own. Don't make a threat if you're not prepared to deal with the consequences. Always drink with your sword hand to show your friendly intentions. Help others in need. Give your enemy a fighting chance. Be there for a friend when they need you. Honesty is absolute. Your word is your bond. A handshake is more binding than a contract. And cheaters lick the floor. And we've since established that now cheaters lick the floor is a rule everywhere in the world. So that's something, and we have a couple other, different things that we've built out. And some of these I built as we went along. Some of these were suggested by Discord chat and stuff. See, there's a bunch of stuff here. Other points of interest, history. And as an example, Kingsdale, which I can show you here. Kingsdale was built by me in the Twitch chat. Kingsdale was named Kingsdale because I love Kingler, was the king part, and Cloudsdale from My Little Pony was how we came up with Kingsdale as the name, and somehow it became a SpongeBob town, because that's what chat wanted. So, we decided a bunch of stuff here, and basically, everything is about crabs, and it's very SpongeBob themed, because that's what the internet wanted it to be. We decided that crab is a way of life here. You crab gans are basically vegans, but they don't eat crab. We decided that the king crab is a person who rules the town. King crab is a gender neutral term, and it's basically there's a process of selection to become the king crab. We made up the Trials of Crabfest here. Slay a giant crab in single combat using only your bare hands and a claw cracker. Forge serviceable armor from the crab you slay, and then eat your weight in crab meat. King Crown is made from glass and orange sand beaches. Crabfest is a 2-week holiday. That's what happens there. And we have the King Guard, Krabby Bunch. Here's the economy, coins, religion, laws, no pollution. Don't steal or destroy crab eggs. Do not damage the tidal totems. Hunting permits are required. And drawing a circle around the town to protect from sea bears. Because this is what happens with the internet. So, yeah, there's a team that basically has to continually make sure that the circle around the town is there to protect from sea bears. We have the Crab Shack, which is the government building. And then we have all of the different stupid-ass towns and bars and shit that we made up. Captain's Quarters, the Snoring Snail Inn, the Confluence, Grounded Snails, the Conch Choice Inn, the Krusty Krab, Red Lobster, the Chum Bucket, Salty Spittoon, Weenie Hut Jr. Yeah, we went hard in SpongeBob here. We made some brothels, owned by King's Hole's owned by Mrs. Puff. Siren's Call has Rick Patrick, who is the bouncer. The star performer is Sandy Cheeks, and Pinhead Larry is the bouncer. God, we're so freaking stupid. Yeah, we have all this stuff. In a Pinch sandwiches. Kevin's Barnacle the books. Oh man, we went. Smitty. Oh yeah. So I had them fight Smitty Werb and Jaegerman Jensen and his army of undead when they went to the cemetery. That was a thing. We had a casino. Yeah, the casino was big. They were, the hash-slinging slasher. Crab and unicorn poacher wants to make a unicrab. Sea bear training to teach you how to draw the circle around the town. This is what they did. They went to take over the night shift, and they were attacked by Smitty Werb and Jaegerman Jensen and his army of undead. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff, like, so you can take world building very seriously, or you can build it with Twitch chat and come up with what I just talked about there. So, world building can go either way, is my point. So, some stuff that I wanted to talk about with you guys is I had said that I had established my world, is that I was using the Faerunian Pantheon. It was one that my players were familiar with, so I thought it made sense, right, to stick with that. But as I've also stated, I would love to release my campaign guide as a book in the future that you guys could pick up if you wanted to run stuff in my homebrew world. And if I were to do that, I need to not reference any gods that are, Wizards of the Coast properties. So as part of that is why you had seen that I started to build out my my pantheon, or at least a high level come up with a pantheon, because I needed to figure out what I was going to do with that. So that's how this all started, as far as like the pantheon conversations. And then I decided, well, how do I deal with that with my players? Right? Their characters have been worshiping deities like Morden and Mistra and all these other things in my homebrew world for all of this time. Am I just gonna that's not how it is anymore? And I could do that. I could just retcon things because reasons. But I thought it would be more fun to make it an in-universe thing that happens for real. So what I decided was that I had brought up a thing in the past in the history of the world that there was a god of death previously to the current god of death, whose name we haven't determined or anything about them, is that didn't enjoy that death was so temporary. And this is kind of a meta conversation about what's going on. That the way things exist in D&D is that people can just be brought back to life so easily, which is, again, like I said, a meta conversation on my thoughts on it. So this deity decided that he was not going to, as manager of as the god of death in the underworld, he shut down all resurrections and no one could be brought back to life. And like some folks were on board. Most of the goodly gods were not happy with this. But he was kind of scorned at how they all sort of laughed at his face of not wanting to have resurrections be a thing anymore. So he went rogue and said, you know what? Screw you guys. No one can come back to the dead. You die and you're dead. And that's the end of the story. And then he started employing... I have the whole thing in my game where there's two different kinds of phoenixes. There's like protection phoenixes or Phoenicians. We haven't decided what the plural of phoenix is. And destruction versions. And he employed the destruction ones, which are more like a living, sentient wildfire, to basically raise stuff and destroy it, and then have them be permanently dead. And at that point, the only way to bring people back from the dead was to use the kind of powers of these goodly phoenixes to bring them back. So the goodly gods paired up with the good phoenixes to try to combat this evil, death deity, drove him back, imprisoned him in the underworld because they couldn't kill him, but they could upseat his, take his seat of power away. Imprisoned him, kind of drove off all of the destruction phoenixes to hide, or they thought they either killed them all or they're hidden. And then the good phoenixes shared with the gods the power of resurrection, and they were able to give that to clerics, and magic exists as it does currently in the world. So what I've been thinking is maybe for some reason or another, all of the current deities that we have yet to design for my homebrew world are not present for some reason. They are hidden, they are trapped, whatever. They're gone from the world. And the deities from Faerun basically absorbed their portfolios to become the deities of my homebrew world while those gods were absent. Some of it could be considered a power move to give them more followers. But basically, history and everything was rewritten so that no one remembers that those other gods are there for one reason or another. And Faerun has taken over, so whoever was the god of magic, it's now Mistra. But the other god exists, but is away for one reason or another. So what I want to have the final genesis of my first campaign to be is like the last thing is that the party frees the original gods of the world, brings them back into place, and then basically drives out the Faerunian gods and sort of locks them there so that they can't come over into this world. And then like in the process of like awakening, all of the world will basically be reminded of what the true history was of the gods and all that other stuff. So that's how I want to in-universe make the changeover from one pantheon to my pantheon. Because I thought that would be cool rather than just retconning everything. So that was something that I thought. And then the greater question is, why are those gods away? Were the Faerunian gods stepping in to be nice and like not leave the worshippers of, the different gods hanging? Or was that malicious? Did they step in on purpose and then drive those other gods away and then take it to have more power? Or was there some other third catalyst that drove, that forced them away? I guess it's really, did the Faerunians step in to help, or did they do it to take power? That's where I'm kind of at the moment. For one of your gods to appear, stars to be missing in the sky, descending to Earth after some powerful spell, action, or object has been used. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is what... So I'm working on the Pantheon. Let me just go over here and I'll pull that up for you guys. Hang on one sec. was working on something with this and I gotta finish it so that I can show it off here. We had this here. Sorry, guys, give me 1 sec while I look at this. Like, can there be a god of anime? There could be. Gods return, shooting up into the sky, shifting the world with an event called the Twilight Eternium. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I want to have this Genesis event. So part of what the party has been doing has been like the capital B balance that exists in the multiverse of D&D, where things need to be in check and in balance. They have been basically put in charge of that. So they've been going to different realms and doing things to balance power, right? So they went to deal with the power vacuum in Barovia after they defeated Strahd. They went to go to Faerun to deal with something that I had made up in my original homebrew game. And now they're coming back to my homebrew world to deal with something else, which is the concept of these phoenixes, these destruction phoenixes. There's a whole thing there, right? So they're dealing with that. And, once that's kind of like the 3 main missions of the prophecy. And then the final thing will be to restore the true gods to power in one way or another. The sort of over-god, I haven't given him a name yet, but it might be Sor Trebor, which is Robert Ross backwards, because I always like having Bob Ross be the over-deity, who literally paints things into existence, and he's a benevolent over-deity. Let's see. So I am going to have dragons, all kinds of dragons in my world, but I haven't decided how I want to handle it and if I want to add new dragons. Like, I have the opportunity to add, obviously, gem dragons and other types if I'd like. Yeah, happy little trees. Paint a little... like, I imagine that he literally painted the world into existence, right? Like, that's, like, there's a mountain range there. Happy little trees over there. Yeah, so that's how I imagine the world was created. So I always thought that was a cool thing to do. All right, let me jump over here. I was playing around with a god of prosperity, adding a god of prosperity to the game. That would cover like commerce and stuff as part of it. I haven't figured that out if I like that or not. Let me just check one thing over here, and then I'll pull that up so you guys can see where I've landed on that. Where are we going over here? Content. Oh, it was a community tab here. Hang on 1 sec. Okay, it was in here. Let's see. It's so many comments on these deities stuff that I have a hard time searching through everything. Let's see. All right, let's pull it up for you. Oh, where'd you guys go? You're over here. Definitely world of her Neuro's deities are fragmented versions of. Yeah, right? Beat the devil out of it. Alright, so here it is. So here's where I have right here. As you guys can see. So I kept gods of magic, battle, and life. And under life, we have protection, healing, and medicine. Then under death, we have destruction, pain, and poison and disease. Then under knowledge, I put forge/craftsmanship as a sub set of knowledge. Then I have under nature, we have sun and moon. Under order, we have justice and tyranny. Under chaos, I put mischief. Under prosperity, I currently have commerce and luck. I don't know if I want to keep luck on prosperity. I don't know if that makes sense. I kind of like having luck be... Actually, I think I'm going to keep luck as its own separate deity because I like having luck be above like a higher deity. I guess I could probably put like agriculture in here too, right? That would make sense as part of prosperity here. Special format. There you go. And then I've got love. I've got travel as a concept of time, but maybe travel should be part of prosperity. That kind of makes more sense, I think. So this is kind of where we're sitting. A lot of people talk about like having a god of beauty. People said like beauty should be a subset of love. And I feel like when I think about it, like beauty isn't like you don't have to be in theory like beauty, like to have love. Beauty isn't a function of love in my mind. But I guess you could get to the more like beauty's in the eye of the beholder kind of a situation if you wanted to. I also like put joy. I thought made sense to go under love, but like that's not necessarily true. Like I guess in theory, if you're in love, you should have joy, but you can also be full of joy and not in love. Like it's not like the end of the world. You know what I mean? So. And I haven't decided, but in my head, I'm like, maybe we have like these kind of major deities and minor deities. And I think they are either like potentially children of those gods, or they were elevated to deityship by those deities, in my mind. So like we know in like traditional mythologies, you have some gods have children that are an aspect of their in some ways they take like an aspect of their portfolio, or in some instances the gods they did some great deed as a mortal and the god elevated them to become a deity. So that's how I'm feeling that works. So the other part of it is too, like, I'm trying to not go like super crazy over the top with the number of deities. But at the same time, like if it makes sense. So currently I have, what do I have? 13 major and 15 minor at the moment, deities. And then I tried to do a lot of combining of stuff where I thought it made sense. Like technically you could probably combine agriculture with commerce, kind of one and the same in a way. I did my death god. OG death god was sundered into aspects of death. Yeah, that's an option too, right? Divided up. So, I've just been trying to, think about this and how I want to handle different things. And then I have to obviously come up with a name for them and then a whole history and how they were created and why they were created. And then something else I was also thinking about is like deities for the different races. Like, should I do, like, I know Faerun is an example where each deity has an entire huge long list of, every pantheon, every race has a pantheon, right? And even in some instances, sub-races have a pantheon, right? Like, Drow have a separate pantheon, it seems like in some instances, than elves. Elves have a pantheon, Drow have kind of a pantheon, dwarves have a pantheon. So I was like, do I want to have a separate pantheon for each race, or should I have a single deity for each race? I don't know where they fall in the grand scheme of all of these ones. Are they like a separate thing? racial deity, or like maybe they're like I don't know where they would fall. You know what I mean? But like I thought I could have like a dwarf deity, an elf deity if I wanted to. Um, Another thought that people have brought up is it could be like an aspect of one of these deities, like, you know, the god of battle. But then that's like, I don't know. That I feel like is narrowing it down too much. I don't know. I know I just want to have a god of dinosaurs. Um, I could kill you guys with me saying Pantheon every time, but it's true. There's been a lot of Pantheon discussion here. That's true. Race deities could fall under the life deity. Different interpretations of the same god is definitely something I had thought of. My god of battle, not war. Yeah, I didn't want to. I like the god of battle better than the god of war in my mind, because I feel like in most instances, more often than not, I feel like the god of war is often considered to be like a bad guy. Not necessarily, but I feel like, you know, we're conditioned to think that purely from Ares in a variety of different resources. Ares is usually looked upon as like kind of a bad guy. Yes, I want to have a god of dinosaurs. I decided to that, and it's the Velociraptor is the dinosaur god. So I have to figure out how I want to do that. And like, so then that's where I'm like, well, I got to have deities of different like creations of animals and stuff. The different races. Yeah, that's true. Athena is a god of war, tactics, and combat and things. So, no, it's tricky, right? I mean, you look at like Theros, and Theros has 5 gods, and they cover pretty much everything. Yeah, yeah, I know. It's a problem as you get with all these gods, and it's just like, okay. Yeah, I know. So, I didn't want to expand stuff too much, and that's why I was trying to combine things or make minor deities under major deities to lessen the overall list. And I like having a god of time. I absolutely want that, and I decided my god of time is a dragon. I thought that that would be cool. So I thought that that would be pretty neat. So I enjoyed that. Put a little note here. I'll say race gods, goids, race goids. Old Soldier, we did an entire bit about TSR and that whole stuff earlier on. So, because I said I would address it early on, and I did, and I didn't want to belabor it every time. So it's definitely, I discussed it earlier. I honestly don't know anything about Skyrim because I'm not an Elder Scrolls guy. I never really got into Elder Scrolls. I played Oblivion because it was like one of the few games that was out on the Xbox 360 at the time, but it didn't really catch my interest. So no worries, Old Soldier. It's all good. But I definitely, we did talk about it because I knew it was going to come up, so I wanted to address it. But no worries, it's all good. My classic antiquity setting, I've got is called Leah. Only worshipped in her aspects, and then each city states have this aspect they worship for the city. Let me go back to the top. I'm going to grab some of your guys' comments and just throw them over to the side here. Just like randomly. Oh boy. Oh boy, what did that do? I just paste the text. Oh god, where is wrap text? Alright, never mind. I'm gonna grab some of these so I don't lose them in the long series of stuff here. Why did that one not post? Weird. Okay, it posted there, but it's all in... This is so weird. Okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure I grab all these before we get too far down and I just completely lose track of them. Okay. God for stars. I think that kind of falls under like nature, sun and moon stuff. Utility, war, sea, magic, death, light, nature, craftsmanship, love, healing, justice, arts, mountains. Yeah, definitely gonna do some sort of race deity things. God of pleasure under love or joy. Yeah, I'm torn about like how to handle love and joy and like, do I need a god of joy? Do I need a god of happiness? I feel like you should have a god of happiness, right? But then it's like, do I need to have a god of sadness? I don't feel like you need a direct opposition to it, but yeah, we could put a god of languages. I guess that could make some sense. I don't disagree with that. Oops. You know, and I can always add stuff and just delete stuff later if I don't think I need it. So, yeah, this is kind of where we're at the moment. Yeah, I could have a god of happiness and sadness, like a some people mention like a two-faced god. And it's just like, you know, I could also be like, oh, you know, follow your bliss. Any of these deities could be a god of happiness. You don't have to have a separate god of happiness. The only thing I don't necessarily have here is like a god of like the arts, you know? Like I have a god of chaos, and under the god of chaos I have a god of mischief. But like what about like a god of art or a god of dancing or a god of singing and like, you know, I don't know if I need that. A god of apostates, interesting choice. Yeah, art kind of makes, yeah, I was like, is art part of knowledge? Is it part of prosperity? Do I even need a god of art? I don't know. That's the problem, is like I think about like I don't want to do like too many. I feel like you gotta have a god of love. I feel like that's a necessity. But is it though? I don't know. Like honestly, if I were to take cut this, right? Cut out this to here. Delete this. Like I'm good with everything above here pretty much, right? Like the over deity, magic, battle, luck, life, and then the sub life ones, death, knowledge, nature, order, chaos, prosperity, and time. I'm good with all of those. Love and joy are the ones that are just kind of like, I threw them in there because I thought they made sense, but I'm not sure that I like them. That's true. I could merge knowledge and prosperity and just make it a civilization god. That's an option. Group art, singing, sports, etc. And do a god of performance. That's true. I could do a god of performance. Ooh, that's good. Not art, inspiration. That's true. Throw some stuff over here. We're gonna throw. We've got performance, inspiration. We've got expression. Those are all good. I'm just throwing stuff randomly down as some options as we go through here. Go. Combine with knowledge. So the other thing I was thinking about too when I was looking and making these is I also, and it's kind of what you're sort of alluding to there, I think, King T, is the concept of like, what would you pray for? You know, when you're like praying to a deity. I didn't want to get too locked up in that, but like the concept of, all right, you would pray for prosperity, right? That would be a thing. You pray for commerce. You know, you pray for your crops to do well, safe travel, things like that. God of emotions. Yeah, that's true. Love, joy, sadness into one. God of expression. That's true. That's an option. Yeah. I'm torn on these. Oh, another thing I didn't put in here, but I can put them down here, is I have primordials in my game too. I decided I wanted to separate them out. So it's, what is it? We have primordials, which we have air, earth, water, fire, light, and dark. So I have those as well. I do have a God of Luck up here. So we've got, we have that. Maybe expand this a little further. Shrink this guy down. Shrink this guy down. Make this, expand this out a little bit. There we go. So now we can get the full look there. So there's kind of the full list as it stands right now, with some other options possibly. And we can put in, I don't know if there's something here. Balance. I feel like balance could possibly, no, I don't have any sort of mythology or anything behind that. This is just like super high level, because I wasn't planning originally on building a pantheon. I was just going to continue to use the Faerunian one. But then I thought about, again, like I said, I have friends who have done, you know, who've made campaign guides, and I have connections with different folks in the industry that do good, like 2C Gaming, for example, right? They did the Venture Maidens campaign setting. They're doing WebDM right now. I have a pretty good working relationship with them, so perhaps at some point I'd consider making my own campaign guide and then publishing it. But if I wanted to do that, I couldn't use I couldn't use the Faerunian deities. I'd have to come up with my own. The other part of it is, if I make my own campaign guide, how thick is this book gonna be if I have this much work on deities to do? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just tricky. Oops. Chaos, madness. Yeah, that's an option. I might put I'll throw madness. Madness under chaos, yeah. God of advancement. Yeah, we have crafting somewhere. Forge craftsmanship up here under knowledge, and we have languages there as well. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't necessarily have to have deities for all of these, you know, but I can always keep adding or deleting. Some of these I do like, some of the stuff we talked about here, right? Maybe making a god of civilization and combining prosperity and knowledge. Some folks said combine commerce and agriculture. That's potentially an option. Or you could argue that, like I said, agriculture is a subset of commerce, right? Because they're kind of one and the same. We could do a god of performance or inspiration or expression, and that could potentially, expression could remove joy. Now, Carlos, I had thought about joy being under love, but I also, my thought process, and this is, maybe it's just flawed, but like, you don't have to be in love to have joy, but I guess it doesn't necessarily matter. That could just be my head thinking too much about it. Debauchery, yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think love being a subset of joy is okay? And like, does it? I mean, it kind of makes sense in my head, But do you think it says too much about like how you need to be in like love is directly tied to joy, or am I just overthinking it? Give you guys a second to answer here. Well, love under chaos. You're not wrong. Love under chaos definitely could make some sense. Love, desire. Cut out the work for us. If you merge Greek and Norse pantheons, you get a good start. Yeah. Arts is the same as beauty. Okay. That's true. Love doesn't have to be romantic. That's a good point. I forgot about that. Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you know what? If I think too much about it, you're right. You can derive joy from pain if that's a thing that you enjoy. So, point well taken. God of love is now a subset of the God of joy. Yeah. And then, yeah, we can put under... Oops, I did that the other way around. The God of joy is now a subset of love. Delete that. Then we can go ahead and put in the God of inspiration, like we had talked about here. Insert a row. Yeah, so we put God of inspiration, which fits. There's our muses type there. Format. So, okay. Taking that. Love, when the subset is joy and inspiration. I think that works. And then I'm like, so you could go from joy to something broader, like indulgence or fulfillment. That's true too. I was debating changing joy to expression, right? Because then it could cover, you know, joy, sadness, and all things like that. And then I'm wondering if do I bother going to like, in my head, I'm like, should every deity does a deity need to have like lesser deities? Do they all need that? Is that too much? So see, like right now, some of them have 3, some of them have 2, one of them has 1, some of them have none. Like, should I make it standard across the board? But then I start feeling like I'm getting into like too much minutia, or not, maybe not. I don't know. The Forgotten Realms Pantheon does probably got a little bit to do with it. I wouldn't lie. But I mean, even if you look at like Greek, there's a lot of lesser deities that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. Like, Aphrodite has how many kids, and they're all gods? She's like 5 or 6 kids, I think, and they're all gods. So that's something to consider, Yeah. So yeah, I thought about the merging medicine and poison and disease, but I liked having the concept of a poison god because it was weird to me, and I thought that would be interesting. And I thought about like what kind of people would worship a god of poison, and I thought that was kind of fun. Yeah, so maybe I'll just leave it like it is, and I'll just tool around with it, adjust as necessary. Keep it as it is, and then I can start trying to build out like for me, I'm going on vacation so I'll give you guys a little bit of life stuff. So next Friday, I'm going on vacation for a week. I'm going to attempt to have enough content backlogged so that I can have content come out every day while I'm gone, so I don't have to record anything. Basically just take a week off. I'm actually pretty excited. I have a ton of vacation time from work because I didn't take any off last year. So I've got several vacations planned for this year, so I'm pretty pumped about that. I'm going away for a week. Next week, I've got Gen Con in September. I'm going to do... I'm going to take my kids to Disney in November. And then I've got PAX Unplugged in December, so I'm pretty stoked. So I'm hoping to maybe like get this roughly narrowed down by the time I leave to go on vacation next week, so that, like, you know, if I'm sitting around just having like a free think while I'm on vacation, if I have this list broken, like locked where I want it to be, I can start like designing the deities themselves. So somebody early on, which is something I was going to address, but someone brought up early on, what are my thoughts about firearms in my setting? And so I have 2 kids now, and I built out that one world, that one city rather, in my homebrew setting, and I named it after my one son. And that was Westwick, and there they have all the dinosaurs and the trains and all the other kind of stuff that he likes. Did I make a document for that one? I don't know if I did. Thought I did. Maybe I never got around to finally officially publishing it. No, I guess I didn't. But anyway, I have, one town for my one son, but then I have 2 now, so I have to make a town after him. So I've been working on that, and my youngest, he also is a huge fan of like tools and anything like that, so I was going to work on that. But something that let me answer this. How do I really feel about D&D? You buy the book still. You haven't liked a single recent one. Also, how about D&D being sold off piece by piece to WizKids for random things? So I love D&D. There's no doubt about that. I love D&D. I mean, the fact that I've had all this growth and I'm sitting here working on homebrew stuff with 100 people in chat at 4 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday morning. I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't love D&D. Yeah, I agree. Some of the books have been shitty. I liked Tasha's Cauldron of Everything a lot. So don't get me wrong. That only came out last year. I loved Tasha's Cauldron. I did not like the books pretty much so far this year. I'm hopeful for the stuff that's coming later. But yeah, I am 100% critical. That's also part of the reason why I never plan to work for Wizards of the Coast or anything like that. I don't really like go out of my way to try to get like sponsorships or do stuff with Wizards of the Coast, because I'm not beholden to the almighty Wizards of the Coast dollar. I can say what I want and still be truthful. Let's see. I don't know what technically is being sold off to WizKids or being WizKids has access to. I'm not really sure what. I know they said they were going to give, some merchandising stuff to WizKids, but I'm not really sure. So I don't know. Yeah, you're right. We wouldn't be critical of it if we didn't like it, right? We'd just be like, man, I'm just not going to deal with it. Just go do something else. No, I didn't really see much about them being sold off. I know there was a thing, I did a video on it earlier this year, where WizKids was going to be working with Wizards of the Coast on more stuff, more officially licensed stuff. And there's a board game that WizKids is going to be releasing that's officially licensed through Dungeons & Dragons. But I mean, who knows, right? There's whatever's going on with this virtual tabletop that they're working on. We don't know what's going to happen with that. Yeah, I do agree. I think Gale Force 9 is probably... Well, one of the biggest things Gale Force 9 was working on was the localization of all of the different D&D books, right? So you could get it in different languages. That was one of Gale Force 9's big tasks for Wizards of the Coast. I don't think they're doing that anymore. Wizards of the Coast is taking localization in-house. So that was a big contract for Gale Force 9. I haven't looked into it. Has anybody seen if Gale Force 9 is doing spell cards for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything? That was like one of their biggest things they did, was the campaign-specific DM screens and the spell cards. Let's see. Let's go look. How about that? So they were working. Let's see. They did a Descent into Avernus DM screen. I think they did an Icewind Dale DM screen. Maybe. Yeah, they did a DM screen and a map for Icewind Dale. I don't see anything for Candlekeep. So I guess they didn't do anything for Candlekeep. And they didn't do anything for Ravenloft. Huh. So maybe they stopped. Looking at what new minis they've done, I see Warforged stuff. So they had some Icewind Dale and I think Baldur's Gate minis. Gaming accessories. Yeah, I don't see spell cards for anything past Xanathar's Guide, so maybe they're done. That's WotC, the dungeon kit DM screen. That's Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, well, Gale Force 9's minis were high-end, unpainted models, less like minis that you'd get from WizKids. Now, WizKids could easily take over that market of like those high-end, you got to cut and put together, sprued pieces. Like you got to cut the pieces of the minis and glue them all together. I have a couple. I think I have the Frog Hemoth and I have a Frost Giant from Gale Force 9. But I could easily see WizKids taking that over. That would make sense to me. That wouldn't be a huge stretch there. But yeah, I haven't really. It looks like Icewind Dale was the last thing Gale Force 9 worked on. But no spell cards from Tasha's, no Candlekeep. They didn't do anything, I don't think, with Wildmount. So, yeah. I used to have a really good working relationship with Gale Force 9. They used to send me all of their spell cards. I have like stacks of spell cards in the other room because I don't even use them anymore because I use D&D Beyond. Which is, again, like I've said before, something else that I worry about. Where that's going to go. But, yeah, I'm not sure. So, anyway, back to firearms, because that was a discussion we were having. One of my youngest son loves, like, all sorts of toy, like, Nerf guns and blasters and stuff. So I said, if any place was going to be where guns are, it's 4:43 a.m. for me. If any place was going to have guns, it would be that town, the one that's kind of built after my youngest son, and he also loves swords and stuff. So I said, we could have guns be in that town, and I said, what would be cool is if we did gun blades. Like I was originally going to do similar to like Final Fantasy gun blades. But after watching some stuff recently and seeing like some of the recent Shadowversity videos about the gun axes, I think that would be way cooler. And it's something we don't see a lot in fantasy, but they were something that actually existed in the real world. which is basically, you know, either a handgun or a rifle that has, instead of a bayonet, it's got essentially an axe head on it, which is really cool. And I thought that would be something. Yeah, there's definitely a gun in Avernus. I think there's like a laser gun or something in there, I thought. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't read it in a while, but yeah. So I thought it would be a cool place to introduce that. Do you think it'd be a good to convert an RPG campaign? Like, I mean, Critical Role did it, and it raised $10 million. So, you know, clearly it could work. I mean, they have a lot of clout behind it. I'm very excited to see what that looks like, the final product of that. So I think it's definitely could be a thing. If people can do it well, an animated series could be cool. But yeah, I think that I'm gonna have basically the gun blades in that town basically be, I think either, I haven't decided if it's hand axe pistol combo or battle axe pistol combo, and then great axe rifle or musket from like the DMG, and it's basically, it functions like either or. And then I wanted to have a concept where, like, if you critical hit, you can like do the other one, you know, so like I could swing and hit you with the axe, and if I crit on it, then I could fire the gun as like a bonus action. I thought that would be kind of cool. The other part of it is, yeah, I haven't really introduced them to my world, and I wanted to have this city that's built after my oldest son, or my youngest son, that's got like, it's gonna have a bunch of tools. He also loves vacuums. It's like a weird thing he's got about vacuums and like leaf blowers, which is why you saw the tweet I made earlier about how would you make like an opposite of like a leaf blower or a vacuum. So like gust of wind, or like the opposite of gust of wind. That's because that's going to be like a thing you can get in that town. But I want it to be on that main continent that I showed off earlier. And I was like, how can I have like a main continent that has such life-changing things like leaf blowers, vacuum cleaners, and guns, and no one know about it? So I decided that this city is basically going to be unplottable. You can't plot it on a map. You can obviously walk and find it and like go into the town, but something about the founder of the town wanted to protect the people and not have their, you know, like not have stuff get out everywhere, so that the town is unplottable. So you can't actually put it on a map, but it exists somewhere. So like the party will eventually find it, which I thought would be cool. So regarding the Final Fantasy gun blades, well, again, like I said, I was talking about the Final Fantasy gun blades based on, they like traditional gun blades like that do exist. They did exist, but they weren't very functional because of the way that works, and that's why I transitioned away from the concept of a true gun blade and more of a gun axe, because I think it's cooler, honestly. And I was always an N64 guy anyway, so Final Fantasy was never really my jam either. Do you ever feel you need to reel yourself back in because your ideas are a bit too ambitious? My DM comes up with interesting worlds, but he gets burnt out. It's definitely possible. I like to take my time and, you know, try to focus on like a specific thing that might impact the players immediately before I go like super overworld crazy, but I also have a tendency to do that too. It's like a story entirely made up of a homebrew campaign, which is a really cool concept, except yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, they seem to have a lot of really solid talent behind the animated series. It's interesting to me because they are voice actors who are voice actors for cartoons, then played a game, and then now they're turning it into a cartoon, and they are the voice actors voice acting their characters from a game that they played. It's like a really weird meta concept, and I really like it. In the Feywild or other pocket plane could prevent them from being on a map. Yeah, I haven't decided if it's like it's in the Feywild or it's like it has some sort of like dome of protection or something, Or just like literally the founder of the town made like some deal with some deity or something, and it was just like, my town will forever be unplottable on a map. Like you just can't do it, but like you can walk into it, which is cool. So like it's like a word of mouth town. Like you could find it, but like I can't show you where it is. You just have to find it. Floating is definitely an option. So yeah, I mean, right? If you can, and like, I mean, if you recall, so I don't know how many of you were like dealing, yeah, the village hidden in the leaves, just like that, actually. Which was not the intention, but basically just like that. Everybody seems to find it anyway. So, yeah. So with Critical Role, if you recall, if you were paying attention or like around at that time when they were going out for it, no one picked it up. They were trying to pitch it to all sorts of major networks, Netflix and Hulu and all these other places, to get someone to pick up the animated series, and no one wanted to bid on it. No one thought it was worth it. So they went to Kickstarter and raised $10 million, and then everybody's like, oh shit, this is the thing. People want this, and now it's going to be on Amazon Prime. So Amazon like picked it up. So now it's got not only the Kickstarter money, but Amazon money. Which was interesting, right? Because like, so now like it has the potential to really go places, I think. But I don't know how much say Amazon has in what happens there either. Pocket Dimension in the Mist, whose entrance appears in a forest after a rainstorm where 3 rainbows appear. Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. Something funky like that. Like, it reminds me of, oh god, it was in Pokemon Ruby Sapphire, I think. There was like that one town like covered in like the one town down in like the ocean area on the bottom, or maybe it was Diamond Pearl, where like you could only get to it like on certain days. Like the old man looks out at the sea and he'd tell you if he sees the town, and like, oh, now we can go look at it. I thought that would be pretty cool. Yeah, it was picked up by Amazon Prime. So like they just did like on the show last Thursday for Exandria Unlimited, they brought up like they had like a little like snippet about the like how the process is going and like some of the people they've gotten involved. And one of the things that like right at the end it says like coming exclusively to Amazon. But I don't know if like the people who backed it on Kickstarter will like get it as like a download. Because like, what if you backed it on Kickstarter and like put all this money towards this huge effort, and then you don't have Amazon? Like, did you just give them money to help back the series that now you won't be able to watch? Which would be interesting, right? I mean, like that would be really shitty if that was the case. Amazon bought it because CR starts on Twitch, so it might give them. Yeah, that's true. It might have had more control over it in that way. Yeah, okay, there you go, Grok. Thank you. Amazon is fronting the capital for 2 extra seasons, but Critical Role still has creative control. Yeah, well, that was probably the most important thing before they went into this, is that, you know, they have the creative control. Yeah, just as soon as someone finishes plotting it on the map just fades. Yeah, that was basically my thing. Like, you'd like look at it and it would basically be like invisible ink. You'd be like, what? I just wasting all your fancy mapping inks and then just watch it disappear. Mirage Island. Thank you, Lord Mew. Well, of course, Lord Mew would know. But yeah, Mirage Island was the one I was referencing, where like you can only find it on certain situations. Unrelated, do you follow some OSR channels / zines? No, I don't really deal too much with the OSR scene. I usually get my knowledge and what's going on in the OSR scene from Jordan and Lex from Dank Dungeons, because we talk on the regular, the 3 of us, since we did the Rod of 7 Parts campaign. And they're big OSR guys, so I just get it from them. Oh God, Avatar. I don't even want to start on the Netflix Avatar because it seemed like they were doing all these like good changes, and then they just made it way worse. Okay, Kickstarter backers get it early online. Cool. Even if you don't have Prime. Well, that answers my questions. Thank you, Grok. Do appreciate it. Let's see. Or whenever someone discovers and enters, they remain there for 3 days. Location changes. Yeah, I haven't decided if I want it to be like a transporting city where it changes like location, which could be a cool thing. Like it's like you don't know where it's going to show up. The only problem if I made the city disappear and like reappear in a different location is if the party ever wanted to go back there, that would be a pain in the ass. So I think it should appear wherever it is, it appears there, the same location. It's just maybe it's not there all the time. Kickstarter is the original 10 episodes and 2 additional seasons, yeah. So I'm pretty excited. I think it's gonna go really well, the animated series. I think it's something that like my wife will watch and get my friends to watch who aren't like Critical Role fans. I can be like, check out this cool D&D anime, let's watch it. I think they'd be on board for that. Yeah, they do also have a lot of material. That is true. They've got 2 campaigns worth, and now Exandria Unlimited. One thing that I've not that I don't want to turn this into just a discussion about Critical Role, but is where they do what they do for campaign 3 is going to be huge. It's going to have so we talked about how possibly 2024 is going to be 6th edition. Do we think Critical Role is going to do campaign 3 in Dungeons and Dragons? Is it going to be a Dungeons and Dragons 5e campaign? Would it be a 6e campaign? Or are they working behind the scenes possibly on their own campaign or their own system that they're going to run campaign 3 in? I don't know. But anyway, that it has, so obviously Wizards of the Coast would want them to make it as a Dungeons and Dragons campaign because it would benefit Wizards of the Coast a lot to have another Critical Role season in their thing. It also potentially they could levy possibly releasing another book, like they did Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. They could possibly lever, hey, make your 3rd campaign a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, whether 5e or 6e, and we'll let you release another book. Well, if you've noticed, Exandria Unlimited, for example, is not sponsored by D&D Beyond. They didn't mention it at all. So, things like that, right? Like they might still be using it at the table, but they're not using it anymore. So, and also D&D Beyond, if we know Wizards of the Coast is doing that whole thing, where they might be releasing their own virtual tabletop / character managers, so D&D Beyond might be going away. True, but when Critical Role Campaign 1 was online, like in person, like that we saw, Campaign 1 was in 5e from the start. Well, I haven't seen the stuff, and I didn't sign any NDA, so we can discuss it briefly if you want. If the survey preview and tabletop thing, will WotC take Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds license? I don't know, but if you think about it from a business standpoint, they've committed to continue to grow their market. The virtual tabletop market is huge. If they'd released an official D&D virtual tabletop with the launch of 5th edition, everybody would be using it. They can. I know like people will say they wouldn't do that, but they 100% are within their rights as a company to pull those licenses from any other virtual tabletop creators, whether that be D&D Beyond, Fantasy Grounds, or Roll20. They can do that whenever they want, as long as their contracts allow them to. I've heard it from folks who work at D&D Beyond that Wizards of the Coast only renews their licenses every year. So at any point, and the folks at D&D Beyond are worried that at any point Wizards of the Coast can pull the license and pull the rug out from underneath them, and then they're kind of floating. They're, dead in the water. So I know behind the scenes, D&D Beyond is working to change the coding algorithms of their site to make it more modular, to make it potentially more viable for other tabletop RPGs aside from just D&D, so that if Wizards of the Coast ever does pull the license from them, they can still make content and still be a viable service. Yeah, campaign 3 could be in 6E, possibly, right? If they have that. That's what I'm saying. Whoever gets it, third campaign of Critical Role, it's going to be big, right? If Pathfinder made a push to have it be in Pathfinder, that's going to be a huge blowout to Wizards of the Coast and a huge boon for Paizo. WotC already had... Now, the other thing that I thought about is what kind of licensing situations does Critical Role find themselves in, because they released Explorer's Guide to Wild Mountain book in conjunction with Wizards of the Coast. To a degree, I don't know what the contracts were like, but WotC owns in part, I would imagine, in some way, aspects of Critical Role, because they have Explorer's Guide to Wildmount in their catalog. Potentially through licensing, they may own part and parcel of that campaign or that world. So that might be a hook that they got in Critical Role that they can use to continue to publish stuff for them. They might have a concept of, like, they released D&D Next for a while before 5e officially came out. Sorry, Tyler. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it on purpose. This is why Baker can't just release Eberron. Yeah, he sold it to Hasbro forever. Yep, exactly. Correct. Yeah, so the things we run into is they own a part. So yeah. Well, there was Matt released the Tal'Dorei campaign guide, and he needed to change the names of all the gods in the Tal'Dorei campaign guide that was released through Green Ronin Publishing. So he had to change all the names, and then he officially got access to all the official WotC content when he published Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, so he could change them all back. But he had to change what was Sarenrae to a different god to be within the confines of Wildmount. But yeah, it's that's the sort of where we're at. Is Hasbro has licensing in some way to Wildmount, so they might be able to not allow them to do stuff, but that's why I was wondering if Critical Role is going to try to make their own RPG system and then run campaign 3 in that, which is an option they have, but I feel like that might require them to ditch most of the stuff related to Dungeons and Dragons, like Exandria and stuff, which I don't feel like Matt's going to want to lose. Right, we still have the secret book coming later this year. We don't know what that could be. I doubt it's going to be a campaign setting, but we never know. And Critical Role possibly could be something. We get another book next year. But I feel like WotC's probably going to push for, we don't know when campaign 3 is going to come about. Right? The difference is we have a campaign in place on Thursday nights right now, and we don't know what the length of time Exandria Unlimited is going to run for. Right? It could run for 3 months. It could run for a year. Right? And that puts us into 2022, halfway through 2022, and then they could put when they're going to do campaign 3 on the calendar, and who knows, that might put us closer to whatever 6E is going to be. So, I don't know. But that's, again, things to discuss and things to consider. If they could get campaign 3 to be 5e content and then maybe transition to 6e and show how truly backwards compatible it is, All I'm saying is everybody wants a piece of that Critical Role pie, and if WotC can get it, that's going to be a huge benefit for them maintaining the growth that they have. Because I feel like, think about how many people got into D&D because of Critical Role. If it was Pathfinder that they were playing, then they'd probably have just as many people playing Pathfinder. You know what I mean? So that's, I just, I don't know. What point is daring to impress if they're just saying with WotC and D&D forever? Yeah, I mean, daring to impress, yeah, I don't know. So thought WotC owned D&D Beyond. No, WotC, D&D Beyond was originally owned by Curse and is now owned by Fandom. So WotC licenses D&D resources to D&D Beyond. It's interesting because D&D Beyond has D&D in the literal name. But yeah, if you've noticed, I haven't seen a Critical Role D&D Beyond promo in a while, or like the theme song and stuff kicking around. So I think their partnership, I believe, it's definitely not part of Exandria Unlimited. So D&D Beyond is not working with Critical Role currently, as far as I know. Yeah, WotC just had a license. Yep, exactly. Thank you for whoever clarified that, Shadzar. It's only 8 episodes for Exandria Unlimited? I didn't know that. That seems really short. I thought it was going to be a lot longer. That's kind of a bummer. No, he does voice acting still. I just heard him in something else the other day. Most control you get to anything D&D is Twitch or YouTube stream because you can do what you want, and WotC can say nothing except DMC. Yeah. Have I watched any Arcadum streams? No, I've not. Game under the DM's 8 episodes, yeah. Yeah, they might run multiple EXU games, that's true. Otherwise, not the DM's Guild, Twitch, and YouTube, you can't make any money off D&D proper. You can under the open game license. But again, to that point, one of the things I've heard about 6th edition, the rumor on the street is 6th edition won't have an open game license. Meaning there will be no Kickstarter, anything for 6th edition. The only way to publish for 6th edition would be through the DM's Guild. So yeah, so that's the current rumor that I've heard, is that 6th edition won't have any open content. The only way you can make content for it will be on the DM's Guild, so it's officially owned by WotC. Because again, anything that you publish on the DM's Guild, not only does Wizards of the Coast or the DM's Guild in one bookshelf take 50% off the top, so you only get whatever revenue you make on your products, you only get 50% of it. They also have full ownership of that content and can choose to use it in any way, shape, or form they see fit in any of their products going forward. So you publish something on the DM's Guild that's basically not yours anymore. You can still make revenue on it, but they can take it and put it in anything they want. So imagine all of the money. How much money has Grim... what the hell is that one? Grim Hollow. How much money has Cobalt Press, WebDM, 2C Gaming, all these folks? How much money have they made collectively on their stuff for Kickstarter for 5e? Think about all that money. Now, if 6e comes out and it's got no open game license, all of those funds that would have been there wouldn't exist because they couldn't publish that. If 6e doesn't have an open game license, there won't be anything like that going forward. If 6e is supposed to be backwards compatible, what would make it any different than 5.5e? Other than the fact that I think they don't want to just go with the 0.5e anymore. They just want to go to a new edition, just a round number. Yeah, well, the thing is, if they make 6e not open game license, those companies, Cobalt Press and the like, could still continue to produce content for 5th edition. Which is kind of a funky thing because they could make content for 5e and then you could upscale it to 6e in theory. but they just couldn't make new content specifically for 6th edition. Well, again, like I said, think about it from a business perspective. What are 2 of the biggest things you can make money on, or some of the biggest things that WotC and Hasbro has no control over? Virtual tabletops and Kickstarter and like third-party stuff. If they make a virtual tabletop that's all their own, that's proprietary, and then they make, they don't allow third-party stuff not published on their own sites, they now have the 100% corner on that market. So they can, like, if people want to keep playing their games in the newest version possible, they need to either buy into all this stuff or not play. So, we can move on from 6e talking. That's why I said, excuse me, keep an eye on what I've got. I'll keep an eye on the channel. Some stuff that'll be coming out in around October or so of this year might be something worth your time. Can't talk about it. Not officially involved yet. Contracts are being developed, but either way. So, anyway, that's that. But, oh, thank you, Tyler. Yeah, well, either way, I'm working on some stuff or trying to help some folks work on some things. So, I look forward to this stuff. So, hopefully they get back to me on the email that I sent over to them, that they asked me to send to them. So, I mean, hopefully that turns around and comes to be something of use in the near future. So, oh, when the hell did it get to be 5 o'clock? Jesus Christ. I've been doing this for 3 hours. How do I keep doing this to myself? So, I think I'm probably going to kind of start to wind this thing down. Chat has started to slow down a little bit. I still have slow mode on. Yes. Yeah, I'm on the East Coast. Yep. It is 5 a.m. for me. I'll turn off slow mode for the moment because we don't need that. Yeah, I've been on since, for 3 hours. I did post about it on Twitter and on YouTube, but, yeah, YouTube's kind of wonky with its notifications, so, but yeah, it's been fun. I had a lot of fun with you guys. I don't know when I'm going to do another one of these. So you never know. Just keep an eye out. I don't really set this stuff up. But yeah, I should probably, go crawl into bed and get a little bit of sleep before I have to wake up with my kids in a couple hours. Try to be a serviceable parent. Not be falling asleep on the couch. Although my 2-hour nap this afternoon with my one son was definitely huge. That was a big help for this, so. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for coming to hang out. This will be available on the YouTube, so if you want to go back and watch any of the stuff, you're more than welcome to. Some folks have been asking about it lately. In the description of this and the description of every single video is my P.O. box. Some folks have been asking. I've been seeing a lot of stuff coming up lately about if I wanted to send you something, how would I do that? I'm not asking or even, no one has to even consider any of that. But if you'd like, there's a P.O. box down there where you can send things to me if you're so interested. That is that. Also, I have a TikTok. So if you like short content like that on TikTok, which is you know, it limits me. So to get me to talk for a minute or less in some instances is very difficult. But TikTok makes me do it. So if you're interested in that, you can go check that out as well. Thank you all so much for watching. It is 5:15 a.m. as I'm closing this out. I will see you all next time.